Good evening and welcome to the December 14, 2021 Planning and Zoning meeting. If we can have stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Shannon, I'm sorry, can we have roll call? Or we're going to do it after, we're going to do it after we swear in our new two commissioners that we have. I'd like to welcome Phil Warden, appreciate it, and Sarah McCracken. And I believe they're going to be sworn in and they know what to do. So they have the pledge. So if you want to please read it and we'll go from
Sarah,
there.
go
And
ahead
Phil?
and raise your right hand
Okay.
and read your pledge.
I, Sarah McCracken, a Planning Commission appointee of the City of Coeur d'Alene, do solemnly swear to affirm that I will faithfully perform the duties of my appointed office. I will support and honor, to the best of my ability, the constitutions of the United States and the state of Idaho and all applicable laws and ordinances and policies of the state of Idaho and the City of Coeur d'Alene, as well as the policies, procedures, and code of ethics and code of conduct of the Coeur d'Alene City Planning Commission. I hereby, through this oath, affirm that I will perform the duties of this in public trust and in fair and equitable and ethical manner, benefiting the dignity and responsibilities of the office.
I, Phil Ward, a Planning Commission appointee of the City of Coeur d'Alene, do solemnly swear to affirm that I will faithfully perform the duties of my appointed office and will support and honor, to the best of my ability, the constitutions of the United States and the state of Idaho and all applicable laws, ordinances, and policies of the state of Idaho and the City of Coeur d'Alene, as well as the policies, procedures, code of ethics, and code of conduct of the Coeur d'Alene City Planning Commission. I hereby, through this oath, affirm that I will perform the duties of this public trust in a fair, equitable, and ethical manner, benefiting the dignity and responsibilities of the office.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you and congratulations and welcome.
Thank you.
And I believe it was a 4-year term?
Yes, so they're going to fill the remainder of the other two commissioners, so it'll be 4 years for them.
Great. So, welcome. Appreciate it. Now we can have roll call.
Okay. Messina.
Here.
Fleming.
Here.
Ingalls.
Here.
Lutrip.
Here.
Mandel.
Here.
Ward.
Here.
McCracken.
Here.
Congratulations. And I have to say it's nice to have a full commission board once again and being live and being up here and everything else. So it's great. Appreciate it. I need approval of the October 26 minutes, please.
I so move.
Second.
I have a first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. At this time, we'll have public comment, and that's anything that isn't on the agenda tonight, that if anyone wants to speak on any other matter that they'd like to share with us. Okay, if not. And Hillary, staff comments?
Okay, well, good evening, commissioners, and welcome to our two newest commissioners. As Chairman said, it's great to have a full commission, so, and thank you to our past commissioners, Rumpler and Ward. Also wanted to thank the other applicants who applied for this position. It's great to see the interest in serving our community and dedication to the greatness of our community and land use and planning and zoning. Just a quick update to you on the Historic Preservation Plan. That's going to be going back to the City Council next week for adoption with some revisions. So I'll send you guys out the final version once that is adopted. But you saw, I think, a previous version of that. So historic preservation and planning do go hand in hand with some of the items that we're looking at with our Envision Coeur d'Alene, with the comprehensive plan update, and with infill housing with our existing infill districts, and with what we're looking at with the core housing code. So I'll be able to share that with you, and there's some recommendations for how we can be sensitive in terms of looking at established neighborhoods that have historic properties and what that looks like for zoning and kind of moving forward with redevelopment of properties and new development. Also on historic preservation note, the council authorized us to apply for a grant through the state to pursue a historic designation for the Garden District. So that'll be something we'll look for consultant assistance with, and hopefully we'll receive the grant funds for that. And then also the Historic Preservation Commission has asked for a meeting to have a few of our commission members attend, just to get a better understanding of the Design Review Commission and the Planning Commission's roles. And so we'll schedule that, and then at a future date, we'd like to schedule a full joint workshop. I think that would be beneficial for all of the commission members. So that's all on those, and then I'll jump into the Envision
Sure.
Coeur d'Alene update. So we've been working through the action item list and narrowing those down, deleting any duplicates and combining some, and checking off anything that's already been accomplished. We've been working with identifying lead partners, and then also with CDA 2030's assistance, kind of figuring out which action items should be just city-led, which ones would be joint, and which ones would just be CDA 2030 as kind of the convening authority. We will be meeting as a commission on January 11th, so our regular commission date, but we don't have any hearings, so we're going to meet that day at noon for the commission meeting, and then we'll do a joint workshop with City Council and CDA 2030 on January 25th to discuss Envision Coeur d'Alene. So the 25th, we'll have our consultant here in person, and so we'll be able to kind of, on the 11th, hopefully get everybody back up to speed on the commission of where we are, and then we'll be able to go into the joint workshop on the 25th and hopefully be able to move this project forward for ultimate adoption. So that's all I have.
Okay, great, appreciate it.
Thank you.
At this time, any commissioner comments before we get into our public hearing? I just would like to say, if any of the commissioners, always give Hillary your schedule if you're out of town, so you know if you're on vacation, so if things come up down the road, you can plan around that. And I know Bill Greenwood from Parks is here. I just want to say the leaf pickup was amazing this year. It was a little bit of a challenge with the wind, and even though the leaves are out there, I just want to say kudos to your department for what they do for the city of Coeur d'Alene. I totally appreciate it.
We helped a little bit.
Oh, the street department does that.
They're the ones that really put that ballet together.
Well, I stand corrected, but anyway, whoever did it, they did a great job. I appreciate it. Thank you. At this time, we're going to go into public hearing. There are sign-up sheets if anyone wants to speak on the public hearings that we're having. Please sign up, and they'll be given to me, and then I'll call your name out after the staff gives us a report, and the applicant will talk about their particular item. And so if you want to sign up for those. At this time, it's going to be, the applicant is Bear Waterfront LLC. The first one is a proposed 3.59 acre PUD. And the second part of this is a proposed 12-lot preliminary plat. And I believe Mike is going to give us a presentation and give us an update on this particular item.
Just like to first just kind of go over some of the steps tonight in the public hearing process. Just to kind of go over that for the new members as well as for the audience. So we open up the public hearing, and then staff will give a presentation. The applicant will then present their part of their development, and then there's a time for public comment. After that, the applicant has a time to respond to that, closing of the public hearing, and then deliberations and findings. So we'll just start off with this public hearing for PUD 3-21 and S-5-21. Applicant is Bear Waterfront LLC. The consultant is Place Landscaping Architecture. There are two requests. First one is requesting approval of a gated residential and mixed-use plan unit development and an 11-lot, 5-track preliminary plat known as the Mahogany Lane PUD. This property is located at 2252 West Bellarive Lane. Legal notice was published in the Coeur d'Alene Press on November 20th, 2021, and all other required notifications have been made. Here's a location map showing where this property is located. It's here highlighted in red. This is Northwest Boulevard. This is the Spokane River. This is BB Boulevard. Here's a close-up aerial photograph of the property. You can see it's highlighted in red. It's a long rectangular shape with a thinner part on the eastern end and some area along the riverfront. This is BB Boulevard. Here's a bird's eye view looking north. Again, here's the property highlighted in white. So the applicant has submitted a PUD site plan. As you can see, this is the waterfront lots, and down here is the mixed-use development lot. I'm going to kind of break this up into two slides so you guys can see a little bit better. This is the east portion of the property. This is the mixed-use development. They're calling it Dolores Depot. It's proposed to be commercial units on the bottom, 3 commercial units, and some residential units up above. Part of this PUD is a realignment of Centennial Trail. Currently, the trail access stops here, and it used to people were going diagonal across, then they routed them north, and they're crossing here. Now it's going to just be a straight across with the realignment of the trail. Part of the PUD is with the realignment is going on the Bellerive HOA property. So the applicant is in an agreement with the Bellerive HOA to do a land swap. So they're going to land swap this open space area for this open space area if this PUD is approved. The applicant is also proposing open space with this project for the residents and for the public, anyone to access. There's a connection here down from the trail down to Bellerive, and it goes towards the west. They're also proposing additional parking for the Bellerive property. This is the western portion of the PUD, and you can see there's 3 residential lots north on the Bellerive part, Bellerive Lane. They're proposing a gated area from here back, and these are the riverfront lots. And each of these riverfront lots has an ADU associated with it. ADU is an accessory dwelling unit. And this is the open space tract to the north. That's one contiguous open space tract. Here's an illustration of their project that the applicant has submitted. And some building elevations they have submitted. There's some residential buildings along the river. Here's one from the water side. And here's facing the street side with the garages. Here's another residential view facing the street. And here's the commercial mixed-use development that they're proposing. It's adjacent to the trail, the applicant has indicated they're trying to access or acquire the pedestrian traffic more than the car traffic. So this will be frontage here along the trail, so people can walk along the trail and access a coffee or a restaurant. There are 7 findings that must be met in order for plan unit development to be approved. Findings B8A through B8G. And we will start with the first one, B8A, that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan indicates this in the Spokane River District, and it's in the area that's in transition. So the comprehensive plan indicates that this area should have a scale of development will be urban in nature, promoting multimodal connectivity to downtown. The overall density may approach 10 to 16 dwelling units per acre, but pockets of denser housing are appropriate and encouraged. That open space and parks, pedestrians and bicycle connections and other public spaces will be provided throughout, especially adjacent to the Spokane River. This slide represents 4 comprehensive plan objectives as it relates to this PUD request. The full list is on page 8 and 9 of your staff report. I'll just go over a couple of these. Objective 1.12, support the enhancement of existing urbanized areas and discourage sprawl. Promote the efficient use of existing infrastructure, thereby reducing impacts to undeveloped areas. Provide strict protection requirements for all public and private waterfront developments, and protect and preserve existing neighborhoods from incompatible land uses and developments. The next finding is finding B8B, that the design and planning of the site is or is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. The property is located within close proximity to the Riverstone development, which offers a variety of shopping opportunities. Winton Elementary is located approximately a mile from the proposed PUD. The subject property is also in close proximity to the Riverstone Park, which provides both passive and active recreational opportunities. The proposed development is similar to the uses that are located adjacent in the Bellerive PUD, which allows for single-family homes along the river with a mixed-use development located at the intersection of Beebe Boulevard and Bellerive Lane. The applicant is requesting a modification of the shoreline regulations. They're requesting a 22-foot setback from the seawall rather than 40 feet from the meander plat line. The Bellerive PUD also asked for a reduction in the shoreline modifications, and that was approved. Here are some site photos of the property. This is on the central part of the property looking northeast along the river. This is the same spot looking south. The applicant has obtained some site development permits to start work on site development, so that they're not working on any part of the PUD until it's approved. Here's a photo looking south and one along the river looking towards the Bellerive PUD, and one looking north along the riverfront. This is at the west end of the property looking east on Bellerive Lane. This is on Bellerive Lane where the gate is proposed to be looking west. And here's on that long narrow piece in the center part looking west, and this is on BB Boulevard looking west. Here's a zoning map illustrating the zoning right along the river is R17, C17 on the other portion. Surrounding land use map, so it's commercial to the north, single family along the river, and vacant in this portion. Finding B8C, that the proposal is or is not incompatible with the natural features of the site and adjoining properties. The subject property is higher along the northern part of the property with elevations dropping downward towards the Spokane River to the south. The natural features of the site are consistent with the natural features of the surrounding properties, including the residential subdivision to the south and east. There are no topographical or other physical constraints that would make the subject property unsuitable for the proposed PUD request. The next finding is finding B8D. The location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will or will not be adequately served by existing public facilities and services. This application has been routed through city staff. Each department has indicated there are adequate public facilities and public utilities available to serve the proposed request. Staff has recommended 31 conditions as part of the PUD and subdivision request. Full staff comments are on page 25 and 27 of your staff report. The subject property is bordered primarily by Bellerive Lane and BB Boulevard, which are local residential streets, with only BB Boulevard being a public street. Any necessary improvements to the frontages would be addressed during construction. A pair of rectangular rapid flashing beacons should be installed for the BB Boulevard crosswalk with construction of Centennial Trail realignment. In regards to traffic, the city engineer has indicated that residential development is estimated to generate a minimal change in peak hour trips compared to what has been previously approved in the Bellerive development. The additional residential units proposed in the mixed-use development are not expected to contribute to a significant increase in traffic. However, the commercial component of this development are likely to increase traffic congestion in the area. It goes on to say that Lacrosse Avenue of the project will be completed prior to the completion of this proposed development, providing another way out of Riverstone area and reducing congestion. The next finding is finding B8E. The proposal does or does not provide adequate private common open space area as determined by the commission, no less than 10% of the gross land area, free of buildings, streets, driveways, and parking areas. The common open space shall be accessible to all users of the development and usable for open space and recreational purposes. The applicant is proposing 17% open space that can be assessed by the public and residents of the proposed development. The applicant has indicated that the open space will be a large natural area with pedestrian sitting, a viewing area, and landscaping areas for the public and the residents to use. Here is the applicant's open space plan that they have submitted. This is the overall open space plan. As you can see, this is the Centennial Trail part of it, and this is the other part on the western portion. I did zoom in on this part. This is the eastern portion. See, this is the new trail realignment. And this is the tract A with access to the north and south on these vista areas, and dedicated tract A along with the viewing and sitting area adjacent to this sidewalk. Finding B8F, off-street parking does or does not provide adequate sufficient for users of the development. There are no requests made to change the city's off-street parking requirements through the PUD process. Single-family homes will be required to provide 2 off-street paved parking spaces per unit, which is consistent with the code requirements for single-family residential. And each ADU will be required 1 paved parking space. The mixed-use development is also required to meet the off-street parking code requirements for both commercial and multifamily. Finding B8G, that the proposal does or does not provide for acceptable method for perpetual maintenance of all common property. The applicant and owner and their design team will be required to work with the City of Coeur d'Alene's legal department on all required language for the CCNRs. The HAA will be responsible for continued maintenance of private driveways that serve the residential lots. Now we'll go into the subdivision part of the findings. There are 4 findings that need to be met in order for subdivision to be approved. The first finding is B7A, but first off, the applicant has submitted a preliminary plat that has been reviewed by staff. The B87 finding, that all of the general preliminary plat requirements have or have not been met as attested by the city engineer. The city engineer has indicated that the preliminary plat submitted contains all of the general preliminary plat elements required by the municipal code. The next finding is B7B, that the provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, rights-of-way easements, street lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, and utilities are or are not adequate. City staff has indicated there are adequate public services and facilities available. Again, there's 31 conditions recommended by staff. Finding B7C, that the proposed preliminary plat does or does not comply with all the subdivision design standards contained in Chapter 16.15 and all of the subdivision improvement standards contained in Chapter 16.40 requirements. Per engineering review, the purpose of the preliminary plat, both subdivision design and improvement standards have been vetted for compliance. Finding B7D, that the lots proposed in the preliminary plat do or do not meet the requirements of the applicable zoning district. Single-family lots require a minimum of 5,500 square feet. The proposed lots area ranges from 2,982 square feet to 26,317 square feet. The applicant has requested the street frontage, setbacks, lot width, and lot area deviations through the PUD process. There are 31 recommendations made by staff. I'm not going to read them all, but however, since the staff report went out, there has been a change in number 6, and I will read that one. The Centennial Trail realignment must be completed, including an installation of a pair of rectangular rapid flash beacons prior to the disturbance to the existing Centennial Trail to provide uninterrupted access, and shall be completed and accepted by the city and North Idaho Central Idaho Trail Foundation before November 1st, 2022, or prior to issuance of a CO or any new building permits, whichever comes first. The applicant has received the staff report and all the 31 conditions. So the decision before you tonight is the 2 requests. They're requesting approval of a gated residential and mixed-use plan unit development and a preliminary plat, 11-lot, 5-track preliminary plat known as the Mahogany Lane PUD. You will need to consider these 2 requests and make separate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. That concludes my portion of the presentation. Mr. Greenwood from the Parks Department is here to make a presentation on the surrounding property and what's going on with that. If you'd like to ask me questions first, or let Bill finish his, and then you can ask.
Yeah, let's see if anyone has any questions about what you just presented.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Can you clarify the change in number 6, the proposed condition, what the change was from what we have?
There was no new building permits were allowed to be issued until the trail was in, was what you have. And we didn't have the rectangular rapid flash, the RFB wasn't in there in the condition. So we put the rapid flashing beacon in there, and then we also allowed them to pull permits, but they wouldn't be able to close them till the trail was installed.
Okay.
Their plan is to do it in one phase and install it in one.
Go ahead, Phil.
Could you clarify for me, condition number 3? Who has to authorize that? Who are these homeowners?
Currently between Tilford Lane And this applicant's proposed property, the city of Coeur d'Alene has a property. The Idaho Trail Foundation has a property. And the Belle Rive Association has a property. So they'd get access easements over that. And they're already in the process of working through that, and that's why that condition's there. That has to be all met and vetted through before this can be approved.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to clarify, so Riverstone Master Association. is
Okay,
at the-
Riverstone
Not Belle
Masters.
Rive.
To the south is the Belle Rive one.
Correct, yeah.
There's a
So
couple
on the
lots.
north, for
Yep.
the commercial, it's the
Yep.
three.
Thanks.
Go ahead, John.
And if I could, a question that relates to that the easement we're talking about is only for the mixed-use piece of this, correct?
There is a portion on
For lot one,
these-
though.
For lot one, it's, yeah, those are the ones for the easement portion.
So the lots that would be created that are off of Bella Reeve Lane, those are already platted now. This is really a re-PUD, is it not? I mean, there's 11 lots down there now, correct?
There are 11 lots down in this area right now. They're making less dense down here, and there's,
So the easement that's necessary, if I buy lot number 9, I would want to make sure I can get to my house, and the route to my house is across a private street. And we've already crossed that bridge with the platting of those 11 lots, correct?
Yeah,
There's already an easement from Bella Reeve or Master Association or whatever for me to get to that.
that's correct.
So that condition 3 does not relate to those.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mike, go ahead.
I have a question. On item 23 on the conditions, it says to sterilize the ground with herbicide before laying down gravel and/or asphalt. Is there a concern of the proximity to the Spokane River and maybe a different way to solve that problem than chemically treating the soil next to the river?
Let the Parks Director speak to that. This is part of their condition, but he'd be the
Peter?
best.
Okay.
I have
Peter?
two questions. The shoreline management, the setback change from 40 to 22 feet, you say that was approved to the properties, the PUD directly upriver from that?
Bella Reeve was 35 feet to 40 from the Platte Meander. They built a seawall, which is further in, and they want to do their measuring from the seawall. I can pull that up if you'd like.
So will this be,
It would be similar to the Bella Reeve Association.
This would have,
So this,
excuse me, slightly increased setbacks from the Belle Rive, from the shoreline. So, yeah, on that exhibit, and the applicant might want to point that out as well, but Mike can show you those hashed lines. So there would be increased setbacks for this project compared to Belle Rive from
there
the
would
high
be
water mark.
increased ones for this?
Increased setbacks from the shoreline.
Then,
Is that correct? Or is
I think
it-
it's
or
gonna
is it
be similar. It's gonna be similar.
In some areas, maybe it's a little bit more?
Yeah.
Okay.
so it won't be, so it'll be similar to the one upriver, maybe a little bit bigger. Now, when you go further up, isn't there a dock, a public boardwalk along the river?
that's correct.
Is there one here?
They're not asking for a boardwalk connection.
So why did we have a boardwalk up the river along with access from the road to the public?
That was part of their request at that time. They wanted a boardwalk for their development to access for everyone.
Well,
to walk up.
I'm sure there was something on the commission's point of view to greatly support that.
Yeah,
Why isn't
that was
that
part of their
here?
open space and proposal at that time.
Why isn't that here?
They're just requesting private docks, and they want their open space to be part of the land, and that they wasn't
So I
part
guess
of
my
it.
question is, why should we be, be different here than we are upriver? Why shouldn't we continue to give public access like we have upriver? And say, I know you can't answer that,
Right.
but I think maybe others can. And the second one is there's going to be fencing. Is that right?
Gate.
It's going to be a gated?
Gate.
gated
There is going to be a
area?
gate at this entrance, you're correct.
Is there any
Just for these
fencing
lots.
between those, is there any fencing along the lines there?
I think the dog park is located at this section, the city's dog
I
park.
don't care about the dog park.
There is a fence here.
I
It has
do
a
care
fence.
about the dog park.
Okay.
I'm going to get to that, but
It
I
has
am
a
aware
fence.
there's a retaining wall at this point to the open space, but I think there is no fence, and the public can just access the open space, but the applicant could speak to that. There hasn't been a fence requested of my knowledge.
one of my issues, as you know, and then down, the one a little further down the river, is, it relates back to West Lake Shore Drive and East Lake Shore Drive. When you have fencing, at least you have to have big enough squares in there so you can see through it. It's not totally a big wall. And then the dog park. I hope through this whole process that lot number 12 or 11 or any of them fully understand the dog park is there, so at some place in the record, they can't come back 2 years from now and register a complaint. Because I guess
Yeah,
the
the dog
dog
park-
park, the dogs are grandfathered in.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead, John.
Mike, would you mind pulling up, one of the PUD site plan, either one of them? That's fine right there. That's actually perfect. So the mixed-use facility that is shown there, that's some apartments or condos above a couple of businesses,
Yes.
a restaurant, a cafe,
think
whatever.
it's-
So that has a parking requirement. Can you show me there where that parking is in lot 1 right there?
The parking's located here along the southern portion. I think there's 3 stalls here, and there's also some parking located here.
So that parking that you're describing there with the arrow is that would meet the requirement.
It would meet the requirement. And
So the parking that we see to the, up from that is that angled parking, which I suspect we're going to hear a lot about.
that is
Not necessary to make the parking requirement.
That is correct. And
that-
it's
that-
not part of the official PUD. The PUD ends right here, but the applicant has been working with city staff. It's on the off-site development, and that's what Mr. Greenwood's going to talk about after this.
And we'll get into all that.
Yeah.
But so none of that angled parking is to make a requirement.
That's correct. None of this parking is associated with Lot 1's commercial use and residential uses.
Can I clarify something else along that? There's a dotted line right above Lot 1 that's got, looks like 3 parking stalls and then 4 on the other side right there. And that's not part of the PUD. That's not on their parcel.
That's correct.
But is that count of spots in the paperwork for the
Yes,
PUD?
that counts for the development in lot 1.
Yep,
Okay.
Yep.
But it's not their property.
that's correct.
It's actually, let's see. I
Land
thought-
This is the
Yep,
city.
you're right, so that's not, but it does count toward it.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
It's the
Mike.
city's property. This.
I've got a question or two.
Okay.
As far as the boardwalk that Peter was relating to, the property to the right of this that's existing there, refresh my memory, Mary Hillary can, is there a boardwalk or there is not a boardwalk at the residents that are built there already, next to this property?
So, yes, it doesn't,
The aerial
doesn't
photo
go
reference.
quite to the end, but yes.
So that's part of the boardwalk that people can access and everything else?
Correct.
Okay. I just
And
want-
so that was part of the open space for Belle Reve. And so of the full project, when they came forward, that was one of the provisions that they offered up was the dock and the boardwalk. It was supposed to be within their track day, which is on the shoreline.
Right.
And that didn't work, so they actually put it out in the water. We had to work with the Idaho Department of Lands on that. So there have been some complications with that
Okay.
open space.
No,
So
so
there
there is
there
a
are 2 different
boardwalk.
projects, and this project is not part of the Belle Reve Association.
But there's connectivity to the boardwalk that all the public can access for all the property that's developed already and people
Correct.
living in.
For Belle Reve, yeah, the boardwalk is public.
And there's nothing like that
Open
in
space.
this particular PUD at this particular point.
Right, this one has very different open space.
Okay.
The trail connection and then the open space behind the homes.
Mike, I know we have an AUD requirements and all that. These AUDs that they're proposing on lots, they can do that, but they're gonna have to stick with the AUD requirements as far as setbacks and everything else that we did, or this is gonna be a little
They requested a
different?
modification on the setbacks, but the height is going to be the same. So there can only be a max of 24 feet in height for the ADUs.
So I know that they're asking for some changes in our setbacks and things like that. The setbacks are pretty similar to the existing properties that are there.
That are
Pretty
adjacent,
much
yep.
along Bella
Right.
Reeve that we all agreed upon. But, so they're also asking for different setbacks for the ADUs and some of the other requirements that are required for people that have existing houses in the city of Coeur d'Alene and want to put an ADU on their property now. So there, some of the requirements they're asking for, the changes are for
They're
the
all-
ADU
Well,
as
they're only
well.
actually asking for a side yard setback, because if you don't have an alley on a lot, which this one doesn't, you have a 5 and a 10, and they're asking for a 5 and a 5.
Right.
And you could be as close as 3 feet on an alley for an ADU in the city, and 5 feet to your neighbor, but and 5 feet if you have an alley. So,
Well, the things that they're asking for changes, besides just residential lots, we're not separating any of these changes they're asking for the ADUs, which we have a separate requirement for the rest of the city for setbacks and alleys and designs and things like that. So we're not, this one isn't looking at it as a two separate requests for just an ADU. It's the whole PDU setbacks, which includes the ADUs in the properties that they can. If you follow what I'm trying to say, it's like if we have a setback of this for ADUs throughout the whole city on an existing property, that I understand you also have to be residing in the home to have an ADU unit? 'Cause that's the
Just for, depending on if you're going to use it as short-term rental, then
Right.
there's the owner occupancy requirement. So, yeah,
okay.
but these are ADUs, so those
So they don't
provisions
have
would
to have
remain,
a-
but they've asked to deviate from the setbacks, so that would be different.
All right.
Than
So
some
that's
other-
what I'm trying to say. The ADUs that they're putting in here, we're not looking at those as different than the city of Coeur d'Alene, except for what they're asking for setbacks on the whole project.
that's
Correct?
correct. Any house in the city can do an ADU.
All right, so they're similar to that. We got the boardwalk, the ADUs. As far as the mixed-use portion, and maybe I'm mistaken, but it wasn't really defined whether there were going to be apartments above that or living spaces above that.
They're requesting 2 or 3 units max. I'll let the applicant
Okay,
talk about that. They
All
said
right.
8 in their narrative, but since then, I think they can clarify that it's going to be a max of 2, maybe 3, and I don't know if they're going to condo those or use those apartments.
all right, I'll address that with the
Okay.
applicant. I got that. I got that. Gate. We had a hearing at one time with Belle Reve. They wanted to put a gate, but that's, again, that street is a private, kind of a public street there. I'm a little concerned about if this goes through with the gate, are we going to hear back, or not hear back, but set some sort of precedent to say, oh, they've got a gate, we want a gate down there and stuff. I understand this is totally a private street, not similar to what Belle Reve has in their neighborhood, or is it the same? If you can help me out on that one.
Yeah, so it's a little different. They would both be private streets, but this is more kind of the extension of Belle Reve Lane, and this doesn't have the boardwalk provision. So that was a lot of the concern that staff and the commission had with Belle Reve, requesting that gated entrance, was the boardwalk and the dock and all of that. That was all part of the selling point for that project, was the public access to that. And Department of Lands had the same concern, if that was gated off, that would restrict public access to the boardwalk, which they made concessions for that project as well to have a boardwalk. So, yeah,
Okay.
they are different.
All right. It was more or less tied into the boardwalk.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. That's all I have for right now.
I'm going to wait now in here.
All right.
And Bill?
Good evening, everybody.
Good
Nice to
evening,
see
Bill.
the 2 new commissioners. This is one of these things that we do a lot around here, and it was really what makes us a good community, public and private partnerships. This plan you see before you here was approved by City Council back in 19. My Park Commission approved it. It's an MOU with the Centennial Trail Foundation to do this Midway project. And it included parking. There's other elements in this this is kind of phase 1. This was a brainchild of John Mueller that paid homage to the railroads that were there. And there's an element in there that's, I guess when they used to switch the trains, it was called a roundhouse. and they would rotate the cars through and move them in and out. So that would be something that would be later in the future. But again, Doug Eastwood, my old boss, who was on the Centennial Trail Foundation, and John Mueller cooked this up with me. And we, for years after the park was built and saw how many people were starting to use it, always thought that this belt through there, that parking would be a good idea. The Centennial Trail Foundation owns a small sliver around that, and that was referenced about them having to give an easement for this development. Doug and I have spoken about this, and he will ultimately give us that deed, and then I will probably hand that over to the Park Foundation to hold that deed for us, okay? So there's another thing about this that really speaks volumes about these partnerships. We would have had to pay for this. The developer is, in his generosity, offered to put in the green belt, offered to put in the parking, offered to realign the trail. That trail's been a funky system or setup for a very long time. I just received the trail counts from this summer from the foundation. From late July to late August, there were almost 13,000 people that utilized this trail. 13,000 people, 12,978, almost 13,000. So there's a real need to get that fixed up. Again, on their nickel, they're willing to do this for our community. It kind of speaks to what Commissioner Luttrop was talking about. You know, the other Bella Reeve did the dock. This developer's doing this for us. And so there's the thing that they're doing for our community. He also, the developer, I met with him with our urban forester. The trees that are along that edge we marked them for him with our urban forestry committee. He had a company come in here and thin those already and prune them. It looks fabulous. And what you're going to see is those trees are going to become more healthy and be a better stand of trees there in the future. And you really can't even notice it unless you took a picture when it was done and afterwards. When you walk it right now, it just looks very, very nice. Mm-hmm. And so he's done that again. He's working with us and didn't, quite honestly, everybody, he could have clear cut that if he wanted to. It's private property. He didn't. He asked us to work with him. Our urban forestry committee, like I said, they marked the trees, they chose the selection, and so he's willing to do that. Additionally, our urban forester, Nick Goodwin, had this idea about a linear arboretum. He says this vision for people that come in and want to know about street trees, what a species looks like when it's mature. So he's working with the developer. He's going to choose some street trees in this design that they're going to plant for us. We'll put plaques on them later so we could tell Chairman Messina, you want to know about that maple, go out to walk on Riverstone out there, and there's going to be a tree that's going to be a mature species, and you know what it's going to look like in your front yard. We'll continue that theme all the way through Riverstone Park. So we might end up getting about 50 trees in there for people to look at, to have an understanding of what that street tree selection might look like. Let's see if there's anything else that I forgot here. Well, again, this was approved by council 9/13/19. This design and the MOU with the Centennial Trail Foundation. That's all I've got for you.
Questions of Bill? Go ahead, Peter.
Oh, no, do you have any issues on parking?
Pardon me?
Do you have any issues on
Yeah,
parking?
we have plenty of issues on parking. When we have larger events there, unfortunately, sometimes people park along Tilford. Mm-hmm. This will help eliminate that.
So this will help that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
John?
I was going to ask pretty much the same question about parking.
Right.
In my own experience, going to the little parking lot down there, it's pretty busy most of the time, even on a non-event day. And I didn't go down there, but in looking through the packet and whatnot, I got curious, and I looked at Google Earth, where you can beam down and street eye view, and I went up and down Tilford virtually. I didn't see any no parking signs, so I mean, people maybe can park on Tilford now. I don't know. It says,
and maybe you're onto something, that we may have to put up some no parking signs on the north side.
So where I was getting at is I see no parking signs on either side.
Right.
I truly believe I could park my car there and I'd be fine on both sides if approved and if constructed. With the angled parking on the south side, it would seem logical that one would put no parking on the north side.
It does, yes.
And that would
Right.
seem to make it work pretty well. I mean, it'd be like the parking right across the street up here, you know,
Well, in
usually
fact,
across the
yeah,
way from angled
I
parking.
measured that too, and Tilford is only 2 feet narrower than Front Street. It's 22 feet versus 24 feet.
Thank you.
And we've talked a little bit about that parking as well. It's like we could bring that parking in to the south deeper to allow for greater distance. And that's an easy fix. It's just, the land, it was going to be a green belt if approved, and it would be easy to lose a couple of feet of that to allow for deeper parking inside that zone.
So is parking part of the PUD?
No.
Okay.
This again, so this is really, this piece of this, what we're talking about, the parking and the green space and the realignment of the trail is really part of what they're planning. This green space and the parking has really been a park idea for many years.
But it's not a matter before us tonight.
Well, it is, it's part of this. I believe it is, because I think it's.
Part of the PUD?
Well, I wouldn't know if it's
Mr.
about.
Chairman, if I may, it's a condition of the project.
It's
So
a condition of the PUD.
It is. So again, it's that public-private partnership. It was also an expectation when Ignite CDA sold the property to the current owner applicant, that there would be the improvement to the Centennial Trail for safety, there would be the enhancements to the open space, green belt, and there would be public parking to improve the area, because we have a big parking issue down there.
So if it is part of our discussion tonight, I'd like to hear from somebody else, in due respect to Bill, on parking needs, dimensions and so forth, whether we should or shouldn't put signs up there. I think that really is a city engineer, and I think there's some criteria that we need to meet either for parking or without parking. And I think that might warrant a little more discussion.
And we have our city engineer here this evening as well.
Chris is here, so,
We can get Chris up here after you're done, Bill.
pardon me?
We can get Chris up here after you're done.
Okay.
Yeah, but this is part of the PUD. It's kind of a give and take, let's call it, for what Bill has said the applicant is giving.
Right.
And in consideration, I guess, for whatever else the applicant is asking for setback changes and things like that. And I'm not saying how this is going to go, but that's kind of the impression I'm getting. They're doing something in lieu of maybe the boardwalk or
Well, I think it demonstrates their willingness to work for the public in general is good.
Right.
Because again, like I said, our park there gets pretty busy on Thursdays. We've actually had big enough events there in the past, they've moved them because we didn't have enough parking. They actually had overflow parking at the time. They would go over and park by the theater.
Yeah.
And we have an agreement with the HOA there to allow us to do that, but it didn't really work for those events, so those events went somewhere else. So again, this would give us some more parking for the community in general. Some folks really right now are parking there in our existing parking lot at Riverstone to access the dog park.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're seeing some increase there. There is parking at Atlas, and that's being used as well. But if you just want to take your dog, I think a lot of people just take their dog there at that lot, and it's an easier hop down from that observation area and go right down into the dog park.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that, and I use that parking lot. It's adjacent to the bank
Yeah.
or whatever.
Right,
and-
that's
and
the one.
stuff. I think added parking is always a good thing for the citizens of Coeur d'Alene. I guess we can have the discussion on whether angle parking is good in this particular situation or not. That will be a discussion, I imagine, and we'll get Chris to kind of.
Chris could probably speak to that much
Yeah,
better than I
a
can.
little bit.
I grow grass, I don't do parking.
Right, and appreciate, that you said that the street is only 2 feet, or what was it, 3 feet shorter than?
2.
2 feet
Yeah.
shorter, so it kind of give you a little idea of, all right, how is someone going to get there when they're on the opposite side of the street?
And some of this too, not in this design, but in the applicant's design, you'll see that we're showing crosswalks that would give access to folks that may be on the north side of the street, direct access to the trail. So we're delineating that to get them off the street as well. Although, you know, if you're coming off Beebe, it's at 22 steps, 25 steps to come over
Right.
to the existing trail. But nonetheless, we're again, being forward-thinking in the fact that we're allowing, I think there were 3 locations, but when he shows that, you can see those.
Okay, okay. Anything else for Bill right now?
Good, thank you.
No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Can we get Chris
Would you
up
like to have
now?
Chris before the applicant? Would that help clarify?
Sure. Hi, Chris. I guess you've heard what we're talking about, so if you can address parking and,
Yeah, so the reason why there's no there are no parking signs on Tilford Lane, I believe, is because it's a private street, and that was up to the private developers to put that there. Per our standards, a 22-foot wide street, we wouldn't have parking on either side because it would be a choke point. I think in this case, if the parking is going to go in on the south side, it would make sense to get approval to put those no parking signs on the north side, because there would definitely be a conflict with cars backing up into cars parked on that side. And it'd just be a situation we'd want to avoid anyway. As far as the angle versus perpendicular parking, it really depends on where the traffic is coming from. If the way that Bill described it to me, it would be people who go to the Riverstone Park, look for parking, they can't find it, on their way back out, they'll be able to pull into a spot. That totally makes sense. If people are coming from BB Boulevard and wanting to park at that end because they have some other destination in mind, then it's going to be a difficult parking maneuver to accommodate. So I don't have a crystal ball to know which way people are going to be coming from for that parking, but putting it perpendicular and moving it a little further off the side of the street would give the opportunity to go from either direction, similar to the Fork Grounds Drive parking by the Workers Memorial on, where we've got the 2 little traffic circles and the wide crosswalk just west of that. We've got 10 or 13 parking spaces right there. Those are perpendicular and just pulled a little further off the road to give people room to see when they're backing out and more maneuver room.
is that street a little bit wider or about the same that Tilford Lane would end up being?
It's been a while since I worked on that project, but I think that one's about 24 feet, so it's probably about 2 feet wider.
Right. Okay.
But
Again, if we pull this in a little bit more, you might be able to make up
Right.
that 2 feet or
Right.
3 feet or whatever it might be, something that can be looked at some point in time, I guess. Questions for Chris? No? Okay. Great,
Thanks.
thanks. At this time, is someone here that,
Applicant
The
team?
applicant?
Joshua?
Applicant time.
I'm just going to ask you to state your name and I'll swear you in.
You bet. Joshua Tripp.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Go right ahead. Thank you.
All right. So first of all, I want to thank everybody tonight for your time. Thank you to the City Coeur d'Alene Planning Department, Engineering Department, Parks and Recreation Group, the Urban Forestry, Belle Rive Homeowner Association, the Trails Foundation, and the Ignite group there. That we've been working with them hand in hand for quite some time, trying to work out all the logistics and the details of what the overall goal and vision here for the development is. And it really has, as Bill says, been a collaborative effort. And so we hope that the exhibits and the information shared with you tonight portray that and show the level of cooperation and effort put into this process. And right out the gate, would like to say that we have received and reviewed the conditions of approval in the meeting minutes, the staff minutes, and we take no exception to those. And surely there are some minor adjustments may be the result of tonight's discussions, but in general, in context, we're good with that. So thank you very much for that. Just to, let's see here, I'm going to pull, where do I get our Mike, there, that's what I'm looking for. Uh-oh, who's driving? You guys, I'll try not to make you sick. So, we have a couple here. Bear with me a second, just so that I'm not messing with Mike's stuff here. All right, so, I mean, I'm just going to speak to this in general terms of overall, and then we can blow up any of these details and stuff. But first and foremost, as you've heard tonight, the development, the PUD, the work within the PUD boundary, we feel like that's very well defined, and it's very clear that we're in excess of the parks and the open space requirement, minimum open space of 10%, with an excess of 17% open space within the development boundary itself. And we also want to point out the fact that our current proposed site planning efforts results in about 85% reduction of the overall maximum density of development that could happen on this property. We're sitting a little under 4% when it comes to density units per acre. And the other part of our project here is, as we have discussed, is there's a lot of work happening in concert with the city and the Parks Department outside of our boundaries. And a lot of those things that you've heard tonight are the, I think one of the most important things is talking about the trail realignment itself. And let me see if I can get this correct one up here. There we go. So, as we know, the current trail right now, as it goes, it just continues straight, and as everyone's talked about, so the realignment and kind of cleaning up of this traveled way for everybody on the trail heading east to west. One of the things that we feel is very important to take note of here is intentionally the focus on what we call Dolores Depot, which is the mixed-use building. That there's in the narrative versus the numbers that we've talked about today. We're talking about maybe 3 commercial retail spaces on the ground floor. So maybe 2 retail and a coffee stand or a coffee shop, something like that. And then 2 residential units above, and that's it. So we're not talking about a high tower. We're not talking about massive condos or, huge apartments and things like that. So we're talking about 2 condos upstairs. The other thing that's really important, we feel, that speaks to the character and the opportunity that's happening down here along the waterfront is the depot is, by pure nature of where it's located, it's meant to be a pedestrian-friendly and pedestrian-focused building. And for that reason, we see there's a tremendous opportunity to provide services to people on the trail when you're you're riding your bike, traveling, visiting neighbors, going to and from different shops, to be able to just get access right here real close to grab a coffee, restroom, whatever you need, versus, most coffee stands and things like that you think are automobile focused. So heavy traffic generating from the vehicle standpoint. So we're really hoping that we can embrace this idea of this walkable, livable community. The other piece that we have is along BB Boulevard, we have a potential for space between the public right-of-way or the BB Boulevard and the sidewalk there and the building, or by nature of the design of the building, very interconnected, interior, exterior, open design concept where, from the coffee shop, there could be cool art displays, there could be music playing, there could be tables sitting under the balconies or the covers outside. So really activating and engaging with this public right-of-way versus, just taking advantage of that opportunity to engage in that space there. I think it was noted here, but I think this exhibit shows it a little bit better. Right here, this is sliver of land. So running east to west along the south side of Tilford is the Trails Foundation property. So that's the deed and the access element that Bill was alluding to. And then furthermore, this piece right here that was talked about with the parking and the driveway access, that's the city of Coeur d'Alene property that we would have to continue the conversation with that. But to your point, Mr. Ingles, this easement and stuff it's required just for this Lot 1 commercial. I think we clarified that for everyone. So getting to your home is not prohibited or restricted by any of that stuff happening there. We also know we've spoke heavily about how long this trail realignment has been a wish list item. And so for this to finally come to fruition and to fix kind of the flow through here, increase pedestrian safety and the interaction that's happening down here at BB Boulevard currently, we all know that this is a significant improvement in overall pedestrian community experience, visitor experience, and safety. We spoke about the existing trees along the, well, I think one thing to keep in mind, excuse me if I'm bouncing all over here, but you know, the discussion of the boardwalk and the open space and Belle Rive and what that's providing versus, and that's very much a waterfront focused experience with the open space. And like Hillary said, you know, the intention of the prior developer was that that would all occur in their tract, which didn't happen, so they had to figure out how to make that work. But very much a waterfront focused activity or engagement zone. Mahogany Lane is more Centennial Trail focused, pedestrian, bikes, walking, dogs, kids. So although we're providing access to the waterfront, we feel that the land-based opportunities and the trail is really kind of the jewel of what we're doing here. Trying to figure out what else. And as Bill alluded to, this opportunity to look at this, you know, this Arboretum walk and what we can do with the City of Coeur d'Alene Parks Department for enhancing that open space and that landscape experience. I think if we dive, I covered the units. I think architecturally, let me go back to architecturally. I think it's good to note if we look at the existing development along Belle Rive here, you know, we have the condos and the residential units. You'll see that you can see it in this aerial photo a little bit, but it's very dense. And we all know how tight it is when you get down there, and it's really hard to get any peekaboo views to the river or anything like that. You'll see, I think one of the things that's really important, and I applaud the developer for their efforts on this, is, you know, although in plan view, you know, we're looking at footprints of these residential homes that seem to, I mean, they, you know, let's face it, they are decent-sized homes capitalizing on the opportunity there to have waterfront living. But the architecture of these structures intentionally, and you see it in the elevations that were put together in this exhibit here. I wish that I could see. How do I turn on this preview? Just a moment, excuse me. Yeah, it's not showing up. Well, I can show it if we need to discuss it. But basically, intentionally, the architecture is very flat. The roof lines are flat. Everything's been reduced and intentionally held lower so that we don't have this massive building infrastructure of over 35 feet on the residential. We can go up to 35 feet on the residential side. On the commercial side, we can go up to 4.5 stories. But we haven't done that. We've kept everything low so that we can maintain views to the river from the trail. And I think it's important to note that through the efforts of the developer, prior to the effort and the work happening on some of the forest management practices, if you want to call it that, along this trail when you're there, you didn't even know the river was there. Now that that's been cleaned up and opened up and limbed up and taken care of, we're really providing this visual connection. I mean, everybody knows the river's there, but you could see it in some of the earlier pictures that were shown. You walk along it, you can't see it. And so those efforts of forest management are improving that, as well as intentionally keeping the architecture low. The site generally sits, the trail sits significantly higher than these waterfront lots, to the tune of probably, I'm guessing, 12 to 15 feet of vertical grade between the trail and the building pads. So if you take into consideration that our roofs are lower, I mean, by nature, you're allowed to see over the top and get that borrowed distant view and visual connection to the river. Also, another off-site element that may or may not live, but that we're proposing is looking at embracing Mueller's idea of these lookout opportunities, little rest nodes or whatever along the trail, if they happen, and that's something that's totally at the discretion of the city, I guess is the best way to say it. They have been located strategically on parcel lines, and if we see this right here, like where you can see through and over the architecture, so it's not like we're putting this overlook right behind a big building that does no purpose. So we've taken a lot of given that a lot of attention to make sure that it's a good, solid solution. I think the discussion of the setbacks, the waterfront setbacks, seems as though that was of interest to the group. And one of the things that happened, and you can see it here, with the prior Bellerive development, is the waterfront setback was established from what they call the plant meander line, which is a line right here, this dashed line, that exists by legal description and survey, meets and bounds and everything else, but it's out in the middle of the water. But it's still a legally described line, and it's the limit of the development. And then from there, establishing the building setback off of that legal line, well, what that ended up resulting in is areas where in the existing development where you have building and homes encroaching 7, 12, 15 feet from the water's edge. We don't have that in our project. What we have proposed, and so we're trying to get better as we go with this, right? Looking back at what was done before, trying to improve on our lessons learned. And I think if I can find, sorry about that. Let's see here. Exhibit, this is all just a guess. There, yep. So, so this, what we're showing here is, again, in the prior development, all this from this line this way was considered setback. We're acknowledging that the current rockery wall that's built at the water's edge, that's what we are asking the 22-foot setback from, so that that's what we're basically requesting is our waterfront setback. And even at 40 feet from the rock wall that you see here, we really only have, we just wanted to show for reference what the 40-foot setback that's required is and what it does. And even with that, we only have a few buildings that are suspect, I guess, if you will. So, but if we look at this 22-foot line, everything is clearly within or outside of that waterfront setback. Finally, I think to speak a little bit about parking. So, we're looking at the community's response and some of the letters and concerns that were submitted. We do understand that there is concern of additional parking and what's happening on Tilford Lane. And, to Chris's point, do we know exactly where people are coming from the east or the west and how are they getting there? We don't completely understand that or have that answer today, but we did, just for graphical purpose here, we have the opportunity, if the city or if the group wishes, to have 90-degree parking instead of angled, so that it kind of meets the best of both worlds. Fortunately, we have the room there because this is all city land, so it would mean that maybe it's just a few more feet of those improvements shifting south. And then certainly, if we did that, we would look at making those crossings and those connections where they make logical sense, where there's existing crosswalks and pedestrian, keeping pedestrian safety and foot traffic in mind. But we did go ahead and just show that with this site plan, that's something that can easily be done if it's something that's desired.
The parking count stay the same?
They would. This
Pretty
was a
close.
this was a quick exercise, but
Good.
yeah,
Okay.
we have the room.
Okay.
And to add as much or more if we wanted to, but I mean, we have the room for, and technically, on a 45-degree versus a 90, you could actually gain parking if that was a desire of the group. So, but for now, what we've done is, we've laid out that 45-degree, it made a kind of a neat connection to the trail and allowed, we located handicap stalls and the striping there for the van units to create these natural breaks in the parking and everything. And we can maintain that if we want to at that 90-degree angle.
And Lot 2 also has the diagonal parking. Is that intended to serve the PUD? Is that intended to be sort of bonus? Is that public parking once again on Lot 2?
The desire of this piece is, this would be retained by the developer, and whether that is for Bellerive or whether it's
They
paid
could post it as
parking
private
or-
parking to serve their PUD.
Yes,
That's
this
up to
is
their.
interior,
Okay.
yes, for the residents in the development.
Okay.
Because of the current existing parking, there's a lack of parking in that
Yeah, there
development.
is.
So trying to improve on that as well.
Okay, well, I have your ear. Lot 12, at the end where it hits the dog park, and we're, deadheading that road. Sometimes it's 11 on one, but it's
Yeah.
12 on this. That obviously doesn't have a building right now, and I see a future dock. Is that open space, or is that intended to be built upon at some date?
So that is, so as one of the gentlemen, I think you were discussing, those are already existing platted lots. And we're maintaining those. We're doing an extreme lot line adjustment exercise in all of this. And that lot 11, 12, that one at the end has always been a residential lot and always will remain a residential lot. And the landowner of that lot is well aware of all the work that's happened to the west with the wet atlas, the dog park, everything the city's been doing.
Okay. And we're right up against the dog fence, and then that deadheads. I'm assuming that you might continue that fence on, because otherwise you're wide open to the public on the backside. I mean, the west facing, everyone can flow straight in from the dog park zone, straight into the development, which is gated on one end, and what is it on the other end?
Gotcha, over here,
Yeah, west side.
this where my cursor
Yeah,
is
it's a
on the west
very
side.
we are dog park users here, and so we see the number of people going through there. And to have it wide open on the end for the purposes of the owners, it is wide open and curious. People will want to walk their dogs down there just for the fun of it.
Sure, super.
So we'd like to hear from you on the intention on what that will be and how that will be handled.
Well, I think that would play into the fencing of the overall development, I would assume. Certainly, the owner of this lot would have say in that as well, I would assume, as the landowner. And then, as you look at, there would be fence along this edge where my cursor is running up, and then once we get behind these ADUs, there would be a fence along there, a smaller fence to separate
Okay,
the,
that was your
and so
question.
that we can keep this open space from the trail all the way through to that tract.
Okay.
That's where the potential fence would be, is behind those ADUs.
Okay.
But we haven't, at this point, we haven't dove deep into fencing design, other than
We're fence fanatics here.
some like them, some don't.
Yeah, at least I am. Okay, thanks.
You bet.
Is that it?
Peter?
Yeah,
No?
you'd mentioned access to the waterfront.
Mhm.
Show me where that is.
Where the access to the waterfront, in the Mahogany or in the Bellerive?
In the PUD.
In the PUD, so then if we go, let me find the overall. So Sorry, I chopped it up, making it easier and made it harder on myself. So as we go along the trail here, the first access point is right here off of the trail. Comes down through so the open space runs east-west between the trail and the PUD. And we have a sliver that comes down into here, which then connects you to the sidewalk, which then this sidewalk system continues down to the pedestrian connection nodes at the boardwalk, right here.
So water access, how close to the water do you get?
How close to the water do you get?
Boardwalk.
You get to the boardwalk
Boardwalk.
that's in Bellerive, which is the
existing
public
Boardwalk,
boardwalk.
it's the
there
existing
now.
So you
boardwalk.
get.
Then when
on
you
the
go
wall.
down the river, but in where these lots
There's no
Seven-
public access.
6 through 12, there's no access.
There's no public access.
There is no public access.
This is
And again,
gated.
back to the point of
It's gated.
the open space focus in this idea is the Centennial Trail and that walking experience versus the waterfront. And so there's no proposed extension of the boardwalk.
So the city had spent quite a bit of time and energy and risk in building Atlas Park, you know. And then you go from Atlas, you go down the river, and there's access, although somewhat limited, but still there's access from the river's edge. We had a lot of discussion on that. You go up the river, and there's access on the boardwalk. But here we've got a demilitarized zone, or a no man's land, no person's land, between the Atlas Park, well, even further down the river, up to when you hit the docks. And it just seems to me that if we want the public to have access to the water and the park and Atlas Park and River's Edge, we wouldn't want to have this break right here, that we'd want to have a continuum.
Let me interrupt for a second, Peter. Maybe Hillary.
This isn't for another
But I
time?
just need to get clarification, maybe refresh my memory. I know at Atlas Mill, we have access to the river. To the right of this, we have access to the boardwalk. To the left of Atlas Mill, which is Lance's project, I don't remember if there was access to the river with the private lots, I think, along the river. And
In that river's edge, there are 2 access points, but it's not the full length of it. And it's based on the distances, so you have to have every half mile, there has to be,
But it's access.
correct.
So there is access to the project next to Atlas Mill site, which is a private residential community, but there's access, direct access to the river somewhere along the private residential lots that will be developed at some point in time.
There is, and then further to the west of that, there's kind of in the Mill River, and then there's kind of the gated portion of
Right.
Mill River. There's no access there until you get to a portion of Mill River.
Okay.
So it's kind of, it just depends on which projects are there. This one, I think to Josh's point, it's well, if you were to look at the existing 11 lots, there's no public access. They're already
Right.
platted. They're kind of fit in between the two. And this project really is focused on enhancing the Centennial Trail and the public safety and improving that experience. So it's different. I understand
Trade-off.
Commissioner Lutrip's
Okay.
concerned, but it's a different project
Right.
with
Trade-off.
public access on both sides.
Okay.
To the river.
Just to clarify Peter's statement, no access, but again, it's a trade, I don't want to use a trade-off, that word, but the amount of improvements for open space along the Centennial Trail is kind of what they're proposing in lieu of, and I'll ask the applicant, if the issue of, oh, gee, we need connectivity with that boardwalk, what's the viewpoint, what's your viewpoint or developer's viewpoint on, hey, we need to put the boardwalk in so there's connectivity to the dog park,
The
because
dog
that's where
park?
it's going to end. Have you looked at that, or did the city talk to them about extending the boardwalk? What's your
Well, I think
take
to
on that?
Hillary's point, the code requires, is every half mile access point, public access point every half miles. So we're clearly, if you come at this from either end, it's kind of like when you do a parking count and you have to have a tree within so many spaces. It's the same thing. We're coming at it from both ends. So even though it's referred to, you say the DMZ there, I mean, we're still within those requirements. Now, if we were miles away, then I would see, a greater concern for that. But the fact that we're at both ends of this, there's waterfront access, we do have the trails, we have the dog park, and a short walk up, and then back over to this public, to get back to the other side there. I don't see it. I don't necessarily think when that code was put together, the intention was to have 100% boardwalk along all of the waterways. Seems a bit.
Right. So you're going by what code is requiring, and they are within code.
They're within the code. And again, Belle Reve, that was their pitch. Their
Right.
open space was along the water, and so
They don't have a lot of
kind of
open
project
spaces.
specific.
They don't have as much open space, the Centennial Trail, the parking when they
Correct.
did Belle Reve and everything else. And I'm trying to see if clarification to your DMZ zone.
Right, but I know, I recall that we had the Centennial Trail went through part of Bella Reve too, and we had some discussions on that. And I appreciate what your focus on the Centennial Trail here for this development, but your developing partners to up the river did similar things. May not have been trees, but there was quite a bit of energy spent in the Centennial Trail on that. Then there was also some energy spent with us on the open space area up the river, and we went down and they measured from the water to the property line, and people put out TV antennas and stuff like that. It was supposed to be open property, but the property owner used it. And we went through a series of discussions, and we finally resolved that. And so, and I understand, our code may say every 2 miles, every 100 miles, but this is a PUD. So, we do have some, if we choose, we can see where I'm coming from, choose this. Secondly, you mentioned fences. I thought before we didn't say any fences, but there are going to be fences. How high are those fences going to be?
Well, certainly they would be at or below whatever the code requirement maximums are of those fences. But I think that also, again, we would need to dive into a little bit more detailed site development permit as part of the overall PUD after this process to figure out where those fences really live and how tall they are.
Well, part of the PUD I'm thinking about is the type of fences.
Right.
Not where they're at, just the type. Because I think as we went down River's Edge, they have fencing down there. Is it 7-foot fence or 6-foot fence?
6-foot fencing?
Okay, so that's that's the code, 6-foot fence. So I'd like to have some discussion on the fencing here so it doesn't block out
Sure.
the views. And I think we have a couple other areas, at least I'm familiar with, because I walk my daughter's dog along those, is East Lake Shore Drive and West Lake Shore Drive. One has fences you can see through, and I think that's a condition there. And the other doesn't have any fences, which I prefer no fences, but I think that, that's too far of a reach. So I would like to see us consider something about the fencing being able to be seeing through them so it's not a big wall. Thank you.
And I fully support, I'm a no fences type guy, but I also think, given the waterfront property, the value and all of this, that if there is fencing, it's considered, we keep it lower, but certainly just by sheer nature of the things I've explained with the architecture, lower transparency views, that certainly falls right in line with everything that we would want to do. And so maybe it's picket, ornamental iron, very transparent.
Well, I'm thinking about fencing to the north.
That's what I'm
Yeah,
talking about
okay,
too,
okay.
So
Well,
I
talking
don't think
about
we're talking
fencing-
about block walls and,
Talking about
razor
fencing, I
wire.
can certainly understand fencing between the dog park and the residential area, as Commissioner Fleming said, so it's just not open to the dog park, and then going up to the Centennial Trail. But also, don't we, or is in the proposal, we have a small retaining wall on the side of the ADU units along the Centennial Trail, which provides some privacy for those ADA units and really access to the property in lieu of, let's say, a fence along Centennial Trail. I'm not saying fences aren't important, but again, the privacy of the residents in that property. So I take it that there is a CMU wall along the whole Centennial Trail?
Whether it's CMU or concrete or block, there will be a wall along this edge behind the ADUs that probably will be 3 to 4 feet tall at the most. And then to your point, maybe there's a 2 or 3 foot piece of fence on that just to delineate private property.
Right, similar to some of the projects we have along Sherman Avenue, there's some CMU walls, concrete walls, to give you some sort of barrier between walking paths and
Yes.
residential units and
Exactly.
stuff like that. Okay. As far as the commercial that you touched on a little bit, you're saying there's, perhaps your plan is 3 units, smaller type commercial units there
Correct. So three commercial spaces or retail spaces
in one building?
in one building, in that footprint that we looked
Right.
at. Yes, so there would be, potentially on this lower, if you divided this building into 3 segments, 2
Yeah.
commercial retail, coffee shop, technically commercial
Small
retail.
little,
Small bistro shops.
all right, and the only reason I bring that up, and I'm sure this isn't part of what we need to make a decision on, but anytime we get a package and there's pictures in a package, and I'm looking at page 19, there's a Wahlburgers picture and another building next to it. And I know this isn't something that we have to look at to make our decision, but, sometimes you see a picture and whether it's us or the general public, look at it and go, wait a minute, that's what they're putting in there. So I just want a clarification. The renderings aren't your intention, or is it, yeah, this is kind of where we're going?
Illustrative.
Yeah, so that's, just a little clarification on that. And I know we're not supposed to be looking at what exactly you're doing, because this is a PUD. It's a little, some of the design, but just a little clarification on that, if you could?
Certainly. So again, as I stated earlier, that's one of the things I think that's unique about this PUD and development and planning process we've gone through. Most subdivisions that we work on, you're carving up land, you're making boxes, and somebody's putting a house, can be whatever house they want it to be, and it's wide open to them. We've gone through the exercise of making sure that there's this symbiotic planning process of the architecture and the land use planning, all the way down to even understanding the footprints of the desired homes of the lot owners in the residential side. The same holds true on the commercial side. Now, with regards to signage and who may do business there, if you strike that from the slate or the renderings, I think you'll find that currently what you see is very representative of the vision of what's there to be developed. So this isn't just from Google slapped in there saying, we think this would be cool. This is a building that has been designed to fit this space and to fit the needs of the community and to provide a myriad of outdoor entertainment space, which, as we see here, this is the trail connection, pedestrian connection here, all the way back and wrapping around. So this is BB Boulevard on this end.
Okay.
So it's very much, and this is illustrating that transparent indoor-outdoor connectivity that I've talked about.
Okay,
To the
so it's
community.
still one building,
One
3
building.
units, something in that realm,
Correct.
with residential above, 2
Correct.
units above or something.
Yes, 2 units.
Okay. Go, oh, I'm sorry,
Okay,
go
yeah.
ahead.
I do want to point out a little bit about the waterfront access, I guess. If we look at page 3 of our staff report, it is, I do appreciate the efforts to connect to the trail, and right where the trail does come up, it aligns pretty close to Riverstone Park and kind of encourages people, I would say, that are walking the trail to use that public access. So I think some of the improvements here would be appreciated by users of the park. But I do have a concern about the setbacks, modifying the setbacks on the river. We only have one Spokane River in Lake Coeur d'Alene, and a lot of efforts with the quality of our lake are, development right on the lake contributes to it and the river. So I'm looking at page 11 where you have the measurements from the wall. Really, is it achievable to meet that setback? Because there's not all of the proposed plans are out of compliance with the 40-foot setback.
So are you talking about what's represented in this
Mm-hmm.
illustration here?
Yeah, because for example, lot 6, maybe a corner, that isn't within the setbacks. So do you think a 40-foot setback on the river would be achievable?
Well, one of the reasons that so the architecture in the homes are, given the design with the garages, the detached garages as part of all of the residential units, and then the ADU with parking underneath there, one of the other things we've asked for is a reduced front yard setback, so that we can push the houses back closer to the street, so that we can create larger, landscape and larger, accommodate the desired footprint. So, could it change? Possibly, potentially, yes. But at this point, I think going back to the prior discussion, we even had discussions of holding this plat meander line and using that as our 40-foot setback. And if you look at this line there's a line right here that's in red, and that's also showing you where the existing homes in the prior development go all the way up to, sticking and protruding much closer. So we're showing that we're asking for 22 feet, but it's an improvement on what was done prior. And technically, in the PUD, we could have came all the way out to here, and if we would have asked for that 40-foot setback, that would be this line that you see coming across. So it would allow like lot 6, or some of these lots to encroach significantly closer to the water, which we didn't want to recreate that situation that was done in the prior development.
Yeah, I'm just curious if it would be an achievable, in an effort to preserve the health of our lake, to try to keep waterfront setbacks where they're restricted at the current time.
Sure. But through the PUD process, that was one of the things that we asked for concession.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. A quick question for you, Randy. Given some of the conversation we've heard, and there's a lot of things in the PUD, where do we stand if we want to make a condition different or something, putting the houses back further or things like that? Where are we, or what can we do once we get to a discussion motion point on this for anything that isn't in our package right now that we might want to do?
Well, the PUD is not a right, it's a compromise, basically, with the applicant providing certain things such as open space and the city providing variances in various setbacks. As far as the conditions that are set out in the packet, those are conditions that our various departments have suggested, but the final decision is yours.
Okay.
You can alter the conditions, add conditions, subtract conditions, but it is the commission's determination that is important. Obviously, each of the conditions has a purpose or has a rationale behind it, but ultimately it's your decision.
Okay, thanks, Randy. Appreciate that. Go ahead, Peter.
Mr. Chairman, we could, though, send it back in some fashion and with our discussion and whatnot, rather than try to design it here, because some of this is fairly technical. So an option we might have, I think we don't approve it with prejudice, without prejudice, whatever that word is, so that the developer can listen to our comments and so forth, and come back and restructure something that meets their needs, and they feel more appropriate, meets our needs, at least what we brought up here.
I guess that's a possibility, and
I don't know if we want to do that, but, it's,
Right, and that'll be at the point of discussion and motion at some point, as well as, the applicant, if we do deny this, prejudice or not prejudice, they always have the ability to appeal our decision to city council, I take it, if they care to, and stuff, as well as,
but I
they can
wasn't
do
so
that.
thinking so much about going to the council. I was thinking like taking a time out and sit down and huddle around it and come up and try to address the things that we're talking about here, as opposed to denying it and coming back with a refined thing. Sort of like every once in a while, somebody comes up and we have some discussion and they say, gee, I can do this, we can do that. And they meet a little bit, then they come back and change and modify.
No, is that would be a
Yeah,
point of
okay.
discussion at some
Yes.
point and see where the vote goes on that or not.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant at this time before I call up the people that have signed up on our sheet. If not, we'll get you back later to address anything that you might hear from the public.
Wonderful, thank
I
you.
appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a few people signed up here, and most of them did not indicate whether or not they wanted to speak or not. So when I read off your name, if you wish to come up, just come on up to the podium and tell me your name and I'll swear you in. I have Bruce and Donna Elliott.
We're just getting educated.
Okay, good place to get it. Kara Elchler, and I apologize.
Sorry, no, thank you.
No, okay. Lee Devereaux. Oh, you're coming up, okay. Lee, just state your name and I'll swear you in.
Lee Darrow.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but
Yes,
the
I
truth,
do.
so help you God? Okay, go right ahead, Lee.
I live at 1370 West Bellerive Lane. I am a member of the board of the HOA. I just want to express that we are 100% behind this plan. You know, we've worked long and hard with the developer and all the other entities to try and make this as good as it can be for the community. And we just hope you'll vote positively for it. And yes, there is a parking problem in our neighborhood.
Okay, appreciate it, thank you.
If I
Oh,
could,
go right ahead.
sir,
No, wait, Lee, John has a question for you.
Sure.
appreciate your testimony. And we've sat up here and heard, from Bellerive in the past about parking and traffic and such. And I understand you're 100% behind this. And you talked about parking. In your view, does the plan that the developer bring forth today make things better, parking-wise, or worse?
Absolutely.
Absolutely what?
It makes it better.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, appreciate it. H.D. Fitzpatrick? Nope, okay. Ernest and Catherine Vestito? I take it you're Ernest?
Yes, I am.
So you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Go right ahead, Ernest.
We're kind of excited about the development that we talked about tonight. We're not too crazy about the angled parking that was presented. Generally, this concerns us because of the traffic that's going to go eastbound and westbound on Tilford. With the angled parking, it makes it almost very difficult for cars coming out of our community. We're located at Arlene and Felton, West Felton, which is basically like a T intersection. Even though our community is gated, for us to access that road, we may have issues with cars going westbound on Tilford, making the U-turn at the park if there's no additional parking there, and going into the angled parking. The issue that we see, and I think you have letters from most of the homeowners from last couple of weeks, is that they're probably going to use our access road, which is Arlene, do a three-point turn and get into the parking lot, into the parking stalls. This issue not only puts a problem for us at our homes, but it also has to talk about the pedestrians that are walking down Tilford Lane, the bicyclists, and also for emergency vehicles as well. That road is narrow, as spoke earlier. It's only 22 feet wide. The emergency vehicles trying to get through that section and get to the park in case of an emergency there, as well as police, that could pose a problem as well. The other suggestion was more of a parallel parking, and saying 8 feet from Tilford south, that might be a solution, but the way this is proposed at this point, we consider a little dangerous. There's also additional parking that I understand are paid parking that are around the same area. I'm not even sure how many parking stalls are proposed. If there's going to be metered parking, is there a time limit as far as 24 hours? I know that I'm not sure if there's a time limit at the park, but you're introducing other problems if you don't have timed out parking, maybe at the park, or especially for the parking along Tilford. And there's other point, I got a point as a speaker just before I walked in the door, so give me a point.
Go right ahead, take your time.
So I think that's the most important part, is just that we're concerned about the people that are accessing that road, either by foot or by bicycle. Just walking your dog, and the cars have to come in and do a three-point turn to get into it. Believe me, we're all human. We're not gonna go all the way down to the park and make a U-turn. There's one way in and one way out. They're gonna do a three-point turn like they learn in school and make that turn into the stall. And that's what we're concerned about. So I don't know if these, as it's already carved in stone, that this was going to happen, but there's got to be an alternate plan that maybe the board can suggest.
What if the Arlene Way had a direct sidewalk straight into a walkway straight into the trail, so that you could move off the roadway and not, you're coming out of your gated community onto a sidewalk dedicated to your transit across Tilford and onto a dedicated walkway down to the Centennial Trail?
I think.
Get you off the road sooner.
Well, for me, it sounds fine. I mean,
It
I
would
can't
be
speak for
pretty
the other
easy.
12 other
It would be
homeowners,
pretty
but
easy.
sounds fine to me.
Yeah, get you off that road, because we really don't want a lot of people on there for trying to get people in and out of that park.
And, we gave some, how busy that parking, I mean, how many?
It has
if there's-
waves.
If
It
there's
has
40,
waves.
if there's 40 parking stalls
Yeah.
proposed, you really think there are going to be 40 people trying to park at one time?
At the concerts, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, events. It's the events
I
that
think the
and
no
we're getting
parking
more and
signs on
more
the
of
north-
those.
On the north end of Tilford is
Yeah,
probably.
we're getting weddings, we're getting all kinds of events nowadays, so, but to get your folks from your walking pathways at Tilford, walking straight across a dedicated, walkway safely into the trail.
I think that's fine, but I'm also talking about other folks other than where we live. There's other people that access Tilford from the hospital, or not the hospital, that.
We're gonna get them onto that
center.
trail, sooner the better.
Yeah,
That's what it's there for.
yeah.
Yeah, they shouldn't be walking on the road. Yeah. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is that Lynn? Is that
Lynn Thomas?
Lynn Thomas? If I'm pronouncing it right? No?
Thomas? I think
Nobody?
I saw that note. She had a note in here.
That's the last person. Is there anyone else? Wow, okay, come on up and tell me your name and I'll swear you in.
Phil Billingsley.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
I missed the very first part of this, so I didn't catch this quite a ways. As you guys, I'm in the same neighborhood as Ernie, who just spoke, and you talked about the concerts that happen, and I don't know if you've been on that road when they have that concert. Mm-hmm. If there are cars parked on this side, kind of like where you're proposing these angled parking or the parallel parking, if a car is coming toward you, you have to pull all the way over and let them pass. It's almost like being on it's a very narrow street. And as Ernie said, the only way to get access back to those parallel, or to those angled parking, would actually be to do a three-point turn right at our fence, at our gate. Now again, we don't have a sidewalk. We keep talking about this imaginary sidewalk. There isn't one there. And even one that came down across the street, we all walk across the street. You have to dodge cars, whether it says walk here or not. But there's no way to walk up and down. Is it Tilford Lane? Is that? So you walk over to the trail. And then I guess the other question I have is, have you guys been to the park where the dog park is and there's a giant parking lot there?
Mm-hmm.
There's a playground?
Atlas. It's the Atlas Waterfront
Yeah.
parking.
Have you guys been there
Yep.
Like I've been there like
It's
maybe.
underutilized.
Yeah.
It's underutilized because the learning curve is slow around.
Right, and then, but of course, on the trail just north of where this neighborhood that we're at is, if you walk up the trail, there's a stairway down to the dog park.
Right.
And of course, there's the parking lot. Now, I use the trail a lot, probably 250 times a year. I gotta tell you, I've never seen that parking lot, even with
10 or 15 cars in it, let alone just jam-packed with cars. And to get down to the actual waterfront, to the dog park, et cetera, there's a beautiful stairway and 2 side ramps down there. And I'm just trying to figure out, like, what would be the point of adding a choked out one very narrow street to add cars where we got a ton of places to park just down the way. And by the way, a park that I haven't seen that sucker full ever. Now, I know in the concerts, right? So what are we talking, 8 times in the summer, 5 times in the summer? And we already have to deal with it. So again, I think that's all I had. I think that's it.
We're building a very large development called Atlas, and that is going to drive a huge number of people into that area.
Yeah.
So we're ahead of what is coming.
Right.
We're trying to be ahead of it.
And maybe just the last final thought is for us, we have no option other than the one-way in and the one-way out. So if some idiot blocks our road with their giant truck, which has happened because they do construction, you just got to get out and tell the guy, hey, can you move? Because I can't get down. This is the only road. I can't go to the park. That's not where I'm going. I have to go to BB, and that's the only way there. So again, that's our concern is if we choke that off even more than it is, maybe we just, that's it. Anyway, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you. And who else? Go right ahead. Oh,
Our buddy.
we have our audio-visual
Audio.
specialist here, going to give us a comment on something, I think.
Parking.
Are we
Yeah,
getting our
it's
wrists
not going to
wet?
involve parking. I imagine people are going to throw things at the back of
What?
my head in a second here.
Are you talking on this, or just?
I am talking on this item right
Oh,
here.
okay. I thought you
Believe
were
it
going
or
to
not.
reprimand us for not
Jeff
doing
Crow
something
of
right. So
City of Coeur d'Alene.
let me
City of Coeur
Give
d'Alene.
us your name and I'll swear you in.
Jeff Crow.
Jeff, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, Jeff. Sorry.
Having sit in that booth for the last 14 years, listened to the first Belle Reeve operation go in, I'm hearing a lot of echoes of things that I've had problems with. So I'm going to go over them really quickly here. First of all, my wife and I have personally been kicked off of Belle Reeve property on 3 separate occasions. The first time was on our bicycles, riding on that, as you call it, Mr. Chairman, that private kind of public street.
Yeah.
We were asked to leave because we were riding our bicycles on it. The second time was walking down the docks. We stopped and watched a boat out in the river, and we were informed by one of the tenants, first they ask you, where is your residence? And when you say, well, we don't live here, they asked us to leave, and we said, well, we're just walking the dock. They said, well, you can walk it, but you can't stop. The third time, we were walking the dock, had not stopped, and we were asked again, where do you live? We don't live here. Well, this is a private dock, you're going to have to leave. And I said, no, I know it's not. I've lived this. You've got entrances that say public entrance or access. No, that public means us residents only. So as you put these rules together, please be very specific. If they're going to give us that public dock, as they took away the waterfront portion of it and gave us the dock access, they really didn't. The street obviously was another issue. And so please be very specific on those exceptions as you put them together. The second thing, Bill Greenwood, love you dearly, but I, again, sat in that booth and heard the term, we're going to save and leave as many trees as possible. How many times? The city's got to start feeling like Lucy with the football at this point, because every time that term is used, they go in and they wipe out all the trees anyway. Good example, honeysuckle and Margaret. Go up there right now. Again, we're going to keep as many trees as possible. All that's left up there is scrubbed garbage pines and 2 big trees. We'll see how long those 2 trees last. But that's all that's left out of that. We're going to keep as many trees as possible. I just had to get it off my chest tonight. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Wow.
All right, I think that's great. Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, okay.
I don't know if I want to follow that one.
Well, let's see how tough you are. What's your name?
Eric Headland.
Oh, Eric. Okay, Eric. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? So help
I
you
do.
God. All right, go right ahead, Eric.
I was going to bring up a few things that weren't quite very clear. As you probably know, I was part of the development team that did Belle Reve and River's Edge up and down the river from here. Josh was correct. The setbacks on Belle Reve were minimized from the Platte Meander line. There are homes 7 feet, 12 feet, 15 feet from the water's edge. And those are the residences right next to this development. So what the developer is proposing is 40 feet originally from the Platte Meander line. Working with staff in the planning department, we went from the 40 feet from the current rock wall down to 22 feet. So the current residents that are planned for there are significantly further back than Belle Reve. Now, as a designer of half the homes in Belle Reve, every single home is jammed up to the setback, every single one. So the setbacks on these homes are going to be significantly further back than even the 22 feet. I'd say about 70% of the home is even back behind that. So we really took that into account. The applicant's a resident of Belle Reve Lane. I own a house in Belle Reve Lane. We all live down there, so we understand what the problems were and are. We've reduced the density down on the water by, I think it's 4 or 5 lots. The applicant owns 5 of the lots. It's not about getting it as close to the water as possible. It's about designing a house now versus putting a square box that we've had to do. When I worked for the previous developer on Belle Reve, it was about jamming as much density on that property as we could. And it worked. And when you go down there, they're 10 feet apart, and they're jammed up against, Lynn's worked on some of them, and we've all been a part of them. So on these lots here, we really tried to design the properties where they're set back even further than the 40 feet that it currently is right now. We spent a lot of time with Hillary and her staff trying to go through this, and this was the compromise that we came up with, was the 22 feet. A couple other little things. There is a plan for a fence. The fence on the trail side is below the trail. So if we put a 4-foot retaining wall to hold up the grade, we put a 6-foot fence on there, we're still 2 or 3 feet below the actual trail itself. So the fence is going to be below your feet. It's really just, as Lynn mentioned, there's a lot of traffic. We live down there. They come off that little switchback and just head right down Belle Reve Lane, bikes, whatever it is. So we're just trying to create, a barrier from the dog park. As for the commercial part for the depot, the developer really wanted, as a resident right across the street right now from that property, wanted to create a really, really cool, authentic building. So they're going to go to, a great expense to design a building that's brick, reclaimed timbers, precast concrete, and wanted to make it look like it's the original depot that was on that property. It's got the raised platform. It's going to be a lot of outdoor space, and it's designed to be a public amenity to the trail. We were talking about it today at the city, and name one place on the trail that you can grab a water, where you can grab a drink. You can't. So we're trying to create a public access with that depot that's not about the automobile. It's about the pedestrian, the bicyclist. I mean, we use that all the time. So the setbacks are really important, the access. The parking, again, we took it from the original plan that was presented to us, and we just duplicated it. If it's angled or straight or 90 degree, the developer's totally open to whatever option, and wants to do it because we know, because we live down there, there's a parking problem. And it's not the residents, it's everybody else that comes down there. So again, with the parking that they're willing to add on Belle Reve, that's to help eliminate the residents from parking on the city parking. So that's why and they're paying for that and keeping that within Belle Reve to help the Belle Reve residents to have additional parking. Again, Josh brought up heights. We try to keep the heights of all the residences down. You should be able to see over most of the residences from the trail. We understand that there was an issue with the setbacks in Belle Reve and how the 35-foot setback was. But again, I'll reiterate that we are significantly behind Belle Reve on our setbacks and how far the houses will be on the waterfront. That's about it.
Great.
Thank you, appreciate it. Come on up.
Good evening.
Just tell me your name.
My name is Chad Wheeler.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Go right ahead, Chad.
I'm also one of the property owners of these lots. And as it stands currently, they're already plotted lots that don't have waterfront access for the community, that I don't think any of the owners are interested in putting a boardwalk across there. That would probably be a deal breaker from my standpoint. And we don't have a PUD or homeowners association or anything right now. So as it stands currently, I could just build my house on the land and that's it. So I think looking at it from the standpoint of what are we offering to the city of Coeur d'Alene in exchange for some minor changes to the setbacks, is the strip of land that's behind that road. It's about 35, 40-foot wide strip of land that really has no purpose. It's been a dirt pathway for years and years and years. So it's an ugly thing that has really no use for anybody else except for maybe the people across it, for them to have a garage over there. And in exchange for that, we're making this, the trail better and mixed use building and a lot of improvements. And so like, I respect the why not have the boardwalk go along, but you're talking about 550 feet of riverfront is the entire community with water access both just to the east and just to the west. So like 1/10 of a mile, where we're talking about the other one, 1 to 2 miles in between, as far as water access goes. And it's something that's already, like, all the lots are sold. So like, those people won't give that up to have a boardwalk go behind it, because there's nothing that they could offer that would make that, that lack of privacy suddenly worth it. So I just wanted to say that as a kind of like, yeah, that sounds great, but I don't think that's something that the owners of that property would agree to, because they don't have to now. We basically want 5 feet on one side and 5 feet on the other, and we're expanding the lots so that there's less homes and less density, and you can see through it, and trying to work with the city to do that. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Thanks, Chad. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Oh, come on. Just tell me your name.
Rob Bloom.
Rob? There's a lot of people I'm not recognizing anymore.
Been a while.
Must be my age. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Go ahead, Rob.
So my wife and I are owners of Bear Waterfront, so a little bit the man behind the mask here, if you will. So I just wanted to I'm not a big fan of public speaking, so I like to let other people do it for me. But I wanted to address it. We have worked a long time on this property, and we've lived in Belle Rive, right across from where the depot is. We lived there for 12 years. Born and raised Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, rare native of Coeur d'Alene anymore. So I have a lot of passion for Coeur d'Alene, and I have a lot of passion to do what's right for Coeur d'Alene. And we own 2 or 3 companies in Coeur d'Alene right now. We employ 150 people in this town. Anyway, so what we have tried to do, and we have a home getting built in this little neighborhood, is really work with everyone we can, the city, the Trails Committee, anyone we can get involved with this. And we have watched the growth in Belle Rive over the last 12 years go from when we lived there, we were the only guys living there on the west side of La Peep, and there was nobody there in the wintertime ever, and then all of a sudden, and that boardwalk was really cool, and now you guys know that it's probably the busiest, fastest growing place in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho right now, with Riverstone and the developments and the parks and Atlas and everything going on. And that BB Boulevard, that crosswalk, has been a nightmare for the trail, and it's been dangerous. I mean, it's so dangerous, it's unreal. With bikes flying across that and going diagonal, you can't tell which way they're coming, and it's been a big deal. So when we went to go look at, when the Ignite property came up, it was a real benefit for us as a homeowner in the back to get a little bit of control, and we're all very familiar with Dennis Cunningham and some of those micro homes that pop up all over the place and add a lot of density to that community. And I just really didn't want to see that occur on that strip of land, and I really wanted to take care of that issue across BB Boulevard, because it's a big one, and it didn't get addressed with Dennis's last development on the east side of BB, And I didn't know what's going to happen if anybody got hold of this side. So if we got a hold of it, I knew we could take care of that issue. We could give away some of that land and readdress the Centennial Trail that a lot of people won't do because they want to put every single dollar that they can get out of every square foot on that land. That is not what's important to me down there. What I really wanted to get was the most use of the Centennial Trail for Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and in the safest way. I mean, our kids are on that trail, and everybody's kids and grandkids are using that trail, and it's a crazy part of the area, and it's only getting busier. Dennis is building a ton more homes on that east side of that property right now, and that road has parking on both sides of it every day, and it's an alley. It's not the same way. So, and for the folks of Tilford there, I mean, we certainly we appreciate that and we understand it. The city really wanted that parking, and we wanted it as well. I think it does make sense. I do think in talking today with Bill and the city, there's a way for us to push that in. I think we talked about it a little bit, that the the 90-degree parking probably makes a little more sense because people are going to definitely come in from that east side and want to go directly in there, especially with how competitive parking is down there. They're going to want to make that three-point turn before the guy can come back. So I think there are some real adjustments and some things we can do and pull that parking lot in, maybe give a little bit of width so there's a little bit of pull in, if you will, to get into that area. But my point being is we're very willing to work with the community over off of Tilford, the setbacks for the lakefront. I think Eric's made a good point. We don't want to be right over the edge of the water, but those lots are pretty small with that road going through. They're somewhat postage stamp lots. I don't think when there was 11 of them in there, they were even buildable, to be honest. So it's a PUD process, right? We want a little bit of give and a little bit of take, but I think in the end, what we're really trying to do is, and you guys should go walk the Centennial Trail right now from Beebe to the dog park. The trees are, those trees aren't going anywhere. We want those trees. They're great. And if anything, we're going to add trees like we've talked with Doug. We did go down there, and Johnston had a big problem when we first were dealing with Ignite about getting rid of those trees. If you walk that now, we've cleaned that up with the help of the city and the forestry department and really did that the right way. And if you walk that trail, the view corridor to the river now is like it was never that way. It's stunning when you go walk down that road, that trail right now. And all of our homes and the fences and all that, we're very cognizant of that. I mean, we want our stuff to be as low as we can get it.
That's fine.
And people have an opportunity to really use that trail. And the depot, I think, will be a very cool, functional thing. We have the thoughts of a bike rental store in that one little retail area, whether it's coffee or whatever it is on that other end. I mean, it's going to be a really neat place for people to stop and have a meeting point over there. And so, anyway, I just thought I would, again, I'm not a big public speaking guy, but I wanted to address that this is important to us, and we want to be a good partner with city and trails.
I've got a question. Regarding the parking on Tilford Lane, 90 degree, I certainly agree with you. And as Commissioner Fleming perhaps mentioned, the access to the homes that are off of Tilford Lane, which we've heard, would you be open to perhaps, if we do 90 degree parking and taking maybe a couple of those out and giving it a dedicated striped street or something to indicate something, so when those people come out, if they want to walk their dogs, get to that trail or whatever, wherever they're going, it might be a little bit safer venture for them to come out.
Yeah, it's the same issue we have on Beebe,
Some
right?
indication that, because I go down there quite a bit. I'm very familiar with that whole area. I have a dog. I go to the dog park. I park at Atkins Mill, or I park at the other lot, walking and take bikes. So I understand what everyone's saying here.
Yep.
But yeah, perhaps when you cross that Tilford Lane and traffic's coming, maybe some dedicated stripe on the street, and not saying put in a dedicated concrete walkway or anything like that,
Right.
but something to give an indication that, all right, we have to slow down so the traffic isn't moving as fast as if nothing was there.
Yeah, I think we're willing to accommodate. And there was some talk of that. I think in the overlay that they did today, there was some two direct. One was directly across from that sidewalk that they have coming north-south to go right across there, and
Right.
another one over a little bit more westerly.
And we can't stop people from walking on the street down there. I mean, it's just you know,
To get them over to the trail, because there is no sidewalk there, which is.
yeah, there's no sidewalk. Maybe there should have been a sidewalk down the road, you know, but it isn't. We deal with what we have. So I just wanted to kind of mention that and be aware of that. Any other questions for Rob at this point? No? Okay, thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Come on.
Patrick Hamlin.
Hold on, Patrick. Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Go right ahead, Patrick.
Sir, I appreciate your last comment about the stripe on that road regarding the parking spot and the strip. I also think that do you want it to be so congested that there are parking spots all the way the length of that, but that you might have a few buffer zones along it? But my really concern is this. Although the adjacent community has encroached upon the waterfront more than is the proposed plan, if we keep moving the line further towards the river, what will happen? Why is it that people always find some excuse to move it further and further and never really want to pull back? And so I feel like that in some ways the developer has been stonewalling, wanting to back off on their design, even if the others have encroached further than they should have. This is a new experience for me to stand up here, and I appreciate having this opportunity, but I don't know where I can go from here, except that I appreciate the opportunity to say so.
You're welcome. Thank you for participating. Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to bring it back to Joshua if you...
Before we do that, Mr. Chair, the Centennial Trail they're talking about, is that in the old railroad right-of-way?
Let's look at the map. So a portion of it is in the former railroad right-of-way, yes.
It is?
And then some of it's on the Belle Reeve property. So this, and Josh it might be better when he comes up to kind of show on there.
What part is that? Sorry.
Oh, the Centennial Trail within the railroad right-of-way. So what the depot, the Dolores Depot is the former railroad right-of-way.
But in that railroad right-of-way there, that we have certain responsibilities, and there's only certain uses that we can use that railroad right-of-way for.
No, this is a separate section. I think you're thinking of the Four Corners master plan and that portion.
This is separate?
This is separate. So this is property that Ignite CDA had owned. So this doesn't have that same BLM lease.
Fine, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Josh, you want to address anything you heard? Go right ahead.
Well, I respect everybody's passion and commitment and comments, and I think to Rob's point and everybody else's, I think we're very inclusive, and we've shown that, and embrace everybody's idea. There's no bad ideas, and I think we really have, aside from the topic of that shoreline setback, it really seems like the big thing here is what do we do with that parking on Tilford, and at the end of the day, that's outside of the PUD, if you will, and so I think, we just need to, whether you guys make a modification to the conditions, that's changed to 90 degree, or maybe ask that we explore that a little bit more, I think that we, basically can hopefully move forward and develop an acceptable solution that's somewhat in kind with what we have there, as we get ready to, seek for approval and get ready to put our site development permit together. I do think that in listening to everybody, the concerns about the traffic, signing that north side of Tilford as no parking, pulling some of that parking to the south a little bit, starts to meet maybe a happier medium there and make a safer environment, and certainly some stripe crossings and things like that to make that solution as good as it can be, if you will. So.
Relating to my statement about some striping on that street, I just want also to put out that if that happens to be done, And I'm not sure if that community has a gate in there. Isn't it just a wide driveway to get into their property? And
Tilford has a gate.
it does have a gate.
Yes.
Okay, so,
It's set back a little
you know,
bit.
again, when you put striping in,
gated.
and if you even put a sign up there, said pedestrian crossing, so cars might go a little bit slower, be aware. At least there's a gate there. People aren't going to walk on that and say, I can get in that little neighborhood. I didn't know there was a gate that you couldn't get in there, I take it, right? So just, you know, be aware if we go that route and there's some striping down there that the people in that residence, so off of Tilford Lane, at least people aren't going to be walking in there because they have a gate. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I think that in this current exhibit, those connections are shown at that 45 degree, whether they, go to 90 or whatever, but, there's no improved public access dedicated or identified. So, this is a vast improvement from what's there, whether you're parking on the gravel shoulder and walking across the grass or you're just walking down Tilford. So, there's a very robust east-west travel route right there. So let's just allow people to get to that so they can get off the street.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's it for me.
Any last chance to ask Josh any questions? Oh, okay, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time
Thank you all
tonight.
for your time. Thank you very much.
All right, I'm going to close public.
I want to ask, Chris, is Chris still here? Chris Bosley?
Bosley.
Yeah,
Bosley.
Bosley, sorry.
Oh.
Bosley. Quick question. Being as how Tilford is very concerned about this public parking, can we limit no overnight parking? And are we doing that on that park anyway, down the road?
From what I
No
understand,
overtime.
it is no
Is
overnight
it
parking.
observed that people move on and get the heck out? Because as we know, there's stuff happening. So can we post it as no overnight parking, and what does that constitute? Is that midnight till 6 a.m.? Is that,
I believe we can. I think that's a good question for legal, actually. What we can do there, but I'm for doing that just to prevent that from happening.
yeah, I think that would give the Tilford folks a little set of comfort.
Given that.
Yeah,
oh,
we
go
can
ahead.
do that. Most parks have parking that is not no overnight
No
parking.
overnight parking. I just don't know if we
I
could
think
post
it's
it.
something like 7 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Something like
Is
that.
the opening. And in terms of the time limitation, that would be up to city council. It would be,
Yeah.
I
Whether
think,
they
city
restrict the
parking.
length of
And
time.
there's a lot of 2-hour parking around the city, but it would be up to the city council to make that decision.
Okay, thanks.
So the city council could put a limit on how long a parking spot can be used, as
Yes.
well as, no parking overnight. We try our best. You can't really stop it. No parking at 11 o'clock at night either. You try, but you can't stop it. As a lot of our city parks are just open, they're not locked, they're not chained. Just the neighborhood, be aware, the city tries, but it's not up to the city to really, I wouldn't say enforce it, but if you have parking, people are going to park, and how to get them out of there after they're not supposed to be, that's, make a phone call, I guess. So, any other questions for Chris?
Well,
Go ahead, Peter.
This parking, again, it's outside the PUD.
Well, let's put it this way. You have a question for Chris before I close?
Well, yes, I
Oh, good.
do. Because
Okay.
if it's outside the PUD, do you have enough information here to go forward and design parking that we're talking about in this area without having come back to us?
Without having to come back to you?
Yes.
Yeah, because this was an approved plan.
Okay, so
Yeah.
then, whatever we're
Yeah.
talking about parking, still, the city has the ability to implement what the city wants to do in conjunction with the neighbors, but it's independent of the PUD.
Correct. The developer is just,
Just as long as you have the ability to control the parking as the city sees fit.
right.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to close public testimony at this time and bring to the commissioners to have discussion, and then after discussion, perhaps a motion. Go ahead, John.
Well, I think some discussion is probably a good thing for all of us to take a kind of a turn and digest and summarize, what we've heard here tonight. And I think folks that live in the Arlene Way or Arlene neighborhood have expressed some concerns. I think that those can be managed. I think we have a native Coeur d'Alenean that lives down there, cares about Coeur d'Alene, and with a willing developer working with Bill Greenwood and Chris Bosley, I think they can figure out, how to make that Tilford Lane work pretty well, and if I make the motion, I would make it such that it would have 90-degree parking, no parking on Tilford, and that they work together to figure out, a good crossing at our Arling. And I think all of that is very manageable and whatnot. And I would go on to say, overall, we see a lot of PUDs here. We've looked at a lot of them. And there's no perfect PUD. They always have a little wart and a wrinkle. But you got to look at the overall picture here. And I think in this case, I think the benefits to this outweigh any negatives, and I'll rattle off a few. I think this public open space is greater than very generous, provides great benefits for everyone. It's 17.6%, and it's open to the public. PUDs don't have to provide they have to provide open space, but they don't have to open it to the public, and this one does. I sat on the Trail Foundation, Centennial Trail Foundation for a few years. I was on that board. There's two areas in this community that are the most hated and dangerous. One is out at Highway 41, if you've ever been through there. They call that Malfunction Junction. And this one is Malfunction Junction 2, and it's quite dangerous. So, the safety enhancements, the connectivity, the parkland, this effectively adds, a quasi-new park for us. And I think all of that is very good. I think we have, very reasonable density down there at 18 units versus, 61 that theoretically allowed. It's not the perfect PUD, but I think the benefits and the community benefits outweigh any negatives, and I'd certainly support this. And I'm very pleased to hear the gentleman from Bellarive speak and say that Bellarive is in full support of this, because in my mind that's very important, and to hear him say that all of this is going to be helpful for a parking issue and problem down there, both for the residents and for us that go down there and visit. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Yeah. Any other comments?
I'll make a comment.
Go ahead, Bill. Appreciate it. Jump right in there.
We're here for planned unit development. Traffic's becoming pretty important, not even traffic, but parking. Planned unit development intended to be innovative in design, not have 75 by 100 foot lots with sidewalks and streets and street side parking. This does that. It does it fairly well, which most of what Riverstone does conforms to this type of criteria. Also, the mixed-use building, I think, is beneficial. It's not going to reduce trips, but it could reduce traffic. People can ride their bike or walk down and buy a cup of coffee or whatever. Certainly keeps a little more traffic off the individual streets. And I think water access is really kind of overplayed. I mean, I love to sit in the peep and look across the river and so on. But as a practical matter, a public access waterway should be a walkway, benches, lighting that people can use. I very seldom see many people who actually have access to this walkway. So as far as the setbacks and so on, I really don't have a problem with what I see here, and I think it's consistent with what has been going on along this waterway for a while now. And also, the predominant use to me, as someone who lives in Coeur d'Alene and just goes over there, it's the trail. I really don't go there to walk the river anyway. It's really the trail and the whole park area and all. It's really what says to me, come on over and take a look, to visit. As far as the design of the parking, that remote parking, I fully understand that the angled parking would discourage people from parking there and going to other places than the park. But we have a willing developer. If there's an easy change, the staff get together after this is over, assuming it's approved, and work it out with Mr. Greenwood and what the neighborhood is looking for. You know, like John said, are there deficiencies here? Of course there are. But I don't think it's anything that is so overwhelming or inconsistent with what we expect as a general concept of what Riverstone should be. And as a PUD, I feel this actually does that.
Thank you, Phil. Go ahead.
I guess I would agree. I think that there's a lot of positives with the way the trail's realigned and, you know, a little bit of commercial space there. And I appreciate the effort for more parking because whether we need it today or not, we will need it in the future. But I guess the only thing I would say is I would encourage setbacks that meet the minimum on the riverfront. The rest, you know, the proximity to the neighboring home and the front yards off the street, I think that's common down there to have a very short distance between the next door. But I do think more as a positive of encouraging people to develop in a way that makes our lake healthy and, you know, following a minimum setback that honestly, if you compare to areas around the country, that is 40 feet is a fair minimum. I would like to see it designed in a way that can meet that requirement, and I don't really think it's that far off, and I think it's an accommodation that could be made. So that'd be my comment.
Oh, go ahead, Peter.
I wasn't here, well, I wasn't on the commission when they did Belle Reeve. I see the dock there, I looked at it, and well, hell, not gonna be used too much, but it's there, it's open to the public, and for some reason, that we chose to have the public access that way, sort of like the boat walk around the marina, I believe. You know, and I like to think I'm consistent. I think I'm consistent on the current waterfront provisions, and I cannot support, and will not support, changing the waterfront setbacks. I've taken that position when we did Blackwell Island, if you may recall, when we did that around there, and I wasn't in the majority, and that was fine, but I got to speak my mind and my feeling that the waterfront ordinance of rules were developed. Did that go to the electorate to develop that, or did it just develop by the council? Or waterfront setbacks, or
For which one, I'm sorry?
the waterfront ordinance? I call it ordinance, but
The shoreline ordinance, yes,
yeah,
it's adopted by city
did that
council.
go to the electorate or just to the council?
Just to council.
Just to
It was
council,
not, yeah, voted on.
But still, nevertheless, I support that, and I can't, there are a lot of very good things about this PUD. And what I have to weigh in my mind is one negative outweigh all the others. And in my mind, it does, and I cannot support this because of the waterfront setback.
Appreciate that. Go right ahead.
Yeah, well, 31 conditions is, I think, a record for me sitting on the commission. But I think it says a lot about the compromise between the developer and the city, which is what PUDs are intended to do, that trade-off. So I actually like the articulation in the waterfront. I also use, that's my running route, and I like the variety of hugging the water, then running on the trail, and now going into Atlas and having different views. So I think even it's probably less than a 0.2 miles where we won't have direct kind of access to that water, and I think it's worth it to have that third place at Dolores Depot and additional parking, which we all need. So if we can have the 90-degree parking and that satisfies some of Tilford's residents' concerns, maybe not all, but at least a good compromise. So I think it's nicely done, and I'm in support of it.
Lynn, do you have?
I think it's all been said. So, on that note,
Well,
can
I
I make a
haven't-
motion?
I-
Oh, you want to
I
talk?
haven't said
I don't want to
anything.
talk because everybody said it.
Yeah. I agree to a lot of the things the fellow commissioners said. I think I approve this particular project for a number of reasons. Additional parking is needed along the trail. I would like to see 90-degree parking. It's set back 2 or 3 feet a little bit further so some of the concerns of the residents that live off of Tilford Lane are met. A little striping in the street, indication that, hey, you know, there's people might be walking across there, whether they live there or for some reason they walk on the street. I think the commercial section with 2 units above is great. It's not going to be high and tall. It's not going to be a lot. It's just enough to satisfy 2 people that want to live down there, or 2 residents that want to live down there, you know, over a commercial building. And the commercial units, I agree. There is no place on the trail to stop and get a bottle of water. I think it'll be a great addition to the trail, especially in that area, to go down and say, hey, I want to get off my bike and get something to drink or sit and watch and stuff. I know there's the Peep and there's another restaurant down there, but they're not right on the trail. I agree, the connectivity to the realignment of the trail is great. I've ridden my bike down many times, and many times I cross that street. I don't know what's coming down there. I don't know who's going to stop, who's not going to stop. Am I safe? I'm not safe. So I think we addressed a lot of the issues, a lot of concerns of the residents that live down there. I agree, again, we need parking, and there's going to be just more use of that area. As far as the setbacks go, I understand, you know, try to protect the river and the waterways here. We're doing the best we can. I think they're not, and I was here when we did Bellerive many years ago, when Chevron first proposed it, and it was this grand vision, which never came about. And we kind of piecemealed some of this stuff together. And we've learned over every hearing what not to do and what to do. This is probably the last piece on the river that I've seen. Maybe there's some more, but I'm not sure. That's going to be able to be developed. Atlas Mill is being developed. There's residentials to the left of it. This one abuts it to the right. There's not much more going on. The city, the Parks Department have stepped up and said, yeah, we can do something, and we've got a developer that's willing to do what they said they're doing. Yeah, we've got to give a little bit. I don't think we're giving a lot, and we're getting a lot more back for the citizens of Coeur d'Alene. So I would approve this, and I'm in favor of this. So, Lynn, if you want to.
Now it's definitely all been said.
You're telling me I'm saying too much again?
Cut to the chase.
Go ahead, make our motion.
Okay, introduction. This matter having come before the Planning Commission on December 14th, 2021, and there being present a person requesting approval of PUD 3-21, a request for a planned unit development known as Mahogany Lane PUD. The applicant being Bear Waterfront LLC, the location 3.6 acres located at 2252 West Bellerive Lane. We'll accept the initial findings of the Planning Commission adopts items B1 through B7, boilerplate. B8, pursuant to section 17.07.230, planned unit development review criteria. A planned unit development may be approved only if the proposal conforms to the following criteria to the satisfaction of the Planning Commission. B8A, the proposal is in conformance with the comp plan. This is based on, and I'm just going to hit the high points. I think they did an admirable job of waterfront development. They're encouraging public and private development and weaving this into an established development already on the river. I think it's a very well orchestrated design. That they are enhancing the trail, and that objective 1.11 community design, they're incorporating our community into their PUD. It's using all the existing infrastructure that's already there, so the efficiency at 1.14 is exemplary. And then the economic environment, again, it's just raising the bar on Riverstone, and it is a magnet for this city now. Goal point 3, home environment. Our comp plan preserves the qualities that make Coeur d'Alene a great place to live. We are managing growth. Yes, we're having growth, and yes, this is looking forward with our parking, anticipating what is coming down the pipe. Recreation, we're enhancing, again, the biking paths, hiking paths, walking. It is a magnet. The trail, I'm on it almost every day with my dog. And I cannot speak
more highly than what it does for this city. And then the administrative development, the incorporation of the city and the contemplation with all the parties coming together to create this has been admirable. B8B, the design and planning of the site is compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. It is an extension to our park, as I said, the roadways. I think they took what Belle Reve failed to do and enhanced and brought it to a better level. So they just, they heard us on Belle Reve and they brought it higher. B8C, the proposal is compatible with the natural features of the site and adjoining properties. In the case of the property located within the hillside overlay zone, does not create soil erosion, sedimentation of lower slopes, slide damage, or flooding problems. It prevents surface water degradation or severe cutting or scarring. It reduces the risk of catastrophic wildfire in the wildland urban interface and complements the visual character and nature of the city. This is based on a thoughtful transition of the higher Centennial Trail dropping down to a lower platform at the river. I think the way they've tucked the ADUs into the hillside and made that a distinct separate element was clever. B8D, the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. This is based on the incorporation of BB and Riverstone and the La Crosse Road completion. Any additional traffic to this, we're going to see the La Crosse come through, and that's going to take some of this heat off of all the pressure that we see on that Riverstone Road. B8E proposal does provide adequate private common open space at 17%, above our 10% requirement. So that, again, is, it benefits us, the city of Coeur d'Alene. B8F, off-street parking, does provide parking sufficient for users of the development and then some through the cooperation with our city and the various integral parts. B8G, that the proposal does provide for an acceptable method for the perpetual maintenance of all common property, and that will come forward through the HOA and the CC&Rs developed going forward. In conclusion, the Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, finds that the request of approval of the Bear Waterfront LLC for the plan unit development as described in the application should be approved. The special conditions are also included in this, the conditions being .1 through .31.
Would you,
With the
question,
modification in number 6, right?
Not on this one, that's the next one, isn't it? That's the next.
Rapid flashing.
If I may.
The next one is number 6.
It would be on both, if I may.
On both? Okay,
So
with the flashing.
condition 6 would need to have the language that's
With
including
the,
installation of the RRFBs.
So we're going to add a.
And then the end of it would be prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy for any new building permit, whichever comes first.
Okay, add that.
And then were you also going to add something on the 90
We're
degree?
going to do the parking.
Okay.
would you wish to consider a 30-second
Being the parallel parking.
and an
addressing an access directly into the roadway into the private community.
Okay, let's, a little clarification on that for Hillary to get that down.
Yes, are
So
you wanting that to
a
be?
90-degree parking?
Should be 90, not parallel. And do you want that as a new condition?
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
make it number.
32.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then would you also, with the,
Dedicated crosswalk facing Arlene Way. There already is a striped walkway there, believe it or not, on the Google
Perhaps
map.
enhance it or
On
it's-
Google, it says there
yeah,
is
well,
one.
enhance it.
I really believe in Google, by the way.
And whether or not that striping would eliminate 2 parking spaces or something like that. So there's a direct connection, not just walking into parked cars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else?
Parking, no parking signs on the east side, is that something?
Do I want to get into the weeds?
Those
I don't
are,
wanna get into
this
the
is a
weeds.
city.
Okay.
This is city.
It's going to be a city responsibility, so you're
Yeah.
basically putting a
What about the
condition
fencing
on
thing
the
that you
city.
brought up at one time?
No, they've given us the fencing and we're accepting it.
We're okay
It's
with the
part of the
fencing?
PUD, yeah.
Okay, that's it.
Would the commissioners consider not modifying the shoreline setback?
I think they're close enough. I'd rather not split hairs.
Well, Lynn made the motion, just to clarify your
Yeah.
question. Lynn's made the motion, including the setbacks and not changing those.
Okay. Yeah.
So you can either yay or nay.
Either yea or
when the
nay.
motion
Yeah.
comes. Okay, so I have a
Okay.
first by Commissioner Fleming.
Second.
I have a second. Roll call, Shannon?
Fleming.
Yes.
Ingalls.
Yes.
Lutrip.
No.
Mandel.
Yes.
McCracken. No. Ward.
Yes.
Okay. That being said, the PUD 3-21 is passed. Now we need the motion for S521. Lynn?
John, do you want to do it, or I'll do it?
Oh, John.
I'll do it.
Okay.
Okay. This matter having come before the Planning Commission on December 14th, 2021, and there being present a person requesting approval of item S-5-21, a request for 11 lots and 5 tracts preliminary plat known as Mahogany Lane PUD. Applicant is Bear Waterfront LLC, location 3.6 acres, located at 2252 West Bellevue Lane. Our findings, the Planning Commission adopts items B1 through B6. B7 pursuant to section 16.10.030A.1. Preliminary plats. In order to approve a preliminary plat, the Planning Commission must make the following findings. B7A, that all of the general preliminary plat requirements have been met as determined by the city engineer or his designee. This is based on the multiple presentations and site diagrams for the project. B7B, that the provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, rights-of-way, easements, street lighting, fire protection, plantings, drainage, pedestrian and bicycle facilities and utilities are adequate. They've asked for no special dispensation, so we've got to follow city code. B7C, that the proposed preliminary plat does comply with all the subdivision design standards contained in Chapter 16.15 and all the subdivision improvement standards contained in Chapter 16.40. And this is based on their provision of documents that have not requested any special changes to those items. B7D, the lots proposed in the preliminary plat do meet the requirements of the applicable zoning district. This is based on a PUD, which rewrites the requirements, and we have accepted that as their presentation. C, order, conclusion, and decision. The Planning Commission pursuant to the aforementioned finds that the request of Bear Waterfront LLC for preliminary plat of approval as described in the application should be approved with the following special conditions applied to the motion, that being points 1 through 32, including perpendicular parking and addressing exiting onto Tilford Lane through the gated community. And let's see, I got to do one more thing. I think that's it. That's it.
Okay.
Made my
I have
motion.
a first by Fleming, looking for a second.
Second.
I got a second by Mandel. Roll call, Shannon, please.
Fleming.
Yes.
Ingalls.
Yes.
Mandel.
Yes.
McCracken. If I didn't approve the first one, then this doesn't apply, right?
Probably
It's
not.
pretty much the same.
Same, right? So no.
Yeah.
Say no to one, you say no to
Oh, okay, what was that, a yes or a no?
No.
Name?
No?
Lutrip.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Okay. Quiet.
Passes.
Passes. S-5-21 passes. Okay.
Okay.
Moving on to the next one. Is everyone good, or do you need to take a break? Let's take a 3.5-minute break.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's
Three and a half.
the Cookie
Every-
Monster.
Okay, thank you, and welcome back to our Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. We can have everybody seated and,
Mike feels ignored.
okay, we're ready to get going.
Let's go.
The next item is the applicant of the City of Coeur d'Alene, a public road right-of-way located at the Aqua Avenue between US 95 and Government Way. Hello, can you hear me?
Sound booth, we don't seem like we have full audio from the
Hello?
dais.
We good? Okay. I can hear you now.
21. The applicant is the City of Coeur d'Alene, requesting an annexation of 5.2 acres of public road right-of-ways along Aqua Avenue and Government Way. Location of the property is the right-of-ways located on Aqua Avenue between US 95 and Government Way, and on Government Way between Aqua Avenue and Wilbur Avenue. Legal notice was published in the Coeur d'Alene Press on November 20th, 2021, and all of the required notifications have been made. Here's a location map indicating where this property is located. It's not really property, it's public right-of-way. So this is the public right-of-way that is the subject property. The green line is the city limits. Again, here's a close-up aerial photograph. This is Aqua, this is Government Way, this is Wilbur. And recently, in 2021, we did an annexation before the Planning Commission, and this is, it doesn't show the updated city limits on this map. Here's the area to be proposed to be annexed. And here's a bird's eye view looking west, and a bird's eye view looking southwest. This property is located in the area of city impact. It's located in the city's ACI. There's an annexation map that's part of the application, showing the existing annex city limits and the proposed city limits. There are four findings that must be met in order for an annexation to be approved. Finding B8 is the first one, that this proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. This property is located in the US 95 corridor, and it's in the area of transition. This slide represents comprehensive plan objectives as it relates to this public right-of-way annexation. Objective 3.16, capital improvements, 4.01, city services. Please note this finding evaluation is based on the request of the public right-of-ways only. There are no private properties that are included in this request and would warrant a complete review of the comprehensive plan policies. Finding B9, that public facilities and utilities are or are not available and adequate for the proposed use. This application has been routed through the city departments, and the proposed annexation will not hinder staff's ability to continue to provide public facilities and public utilities. Finding B10, that the physical characteristics of the site do or do not make it suitable for the request at this time. The site is relatively flat. There are no topographical or physical constraints that would make the subject public right-of-way unsuitable for the annexation request. There's a topographic map indicating the topography. Kind of slopes up towards on Aqua Avenue towards US 95, and other than that, it's relatively flat. Here's some site photos. This is on Government Way looking north at Wilbur. This is at the intersection of Aqua and Government Way looking south. This is at Government Way and Aqua looking northwest. This is around Aqua Avenue and Government Way looking west. This is at the end of Aqua looking towards US 95. And then this is looking back on Aqua looking towards Government Way. The last finding is finding B11, that the proposal would or would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and/or existing land uses. The proposed annexation gives the city, rather than Lakes Highway District, the ability to control property, access, and restrictions to the newly annexed Dodge property. This findings would be based on traffic congestion and existing land use patterns. Here's showing the existing zoning. However, this is public right-of-way and does not carry a zoning classification. And this is the surrounding land uses, predominantly commercial. Some civic uses here. Decision point is the annexation of 5.2 acres of public right-of-ways along Aqua Avenue between US 95 and Government Way, and on Government Way between Aqua Avenue and Wilburn Avenue. The Planning Commission's role in this annexation request is normally related to zoning. In this case, because the annexation involves public rights-of-way, the commission would make a recommendation to City Council that the annexed territory be assigned no zoning classification. Planning Commission will need to consider this request and make appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. And that concludes my presentation.
Questions of Mike? Anyone? Go ahead, John.
Just curious, Mike, what's behind this? This is the first time I've ever seen us just annex right away, and I thought when we annex property like the Dodge property or whatnot, if the city annexes property that on the other side of the street is a different entity, Hayden, Dalton, whatever, that you get half of the road or whatever, or the jurisdictions kind of split it. And if you have both, if the city is annexing property on both sides of a road, then the city, owns that right away. I'm just curious, when the Dodge property came through, did we meets and bounds it wrong, or what's
Well, on the
behind
Dodge
it?
property, they had small sections, like just this portion was going to be in the city, and the rest would be in lakes, and then they have this portion would be in the city.
So
Then-
instead of a hopscotch kind of deal, this cleans all that up.
That's right, and Lakes Highway District is in agreement with this annexation.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may clarify too, so they actually, after the Dodge annexation went through, we heard from Lakes Highway District asking why we didn't annex the roadways as well. So we met with them a few times and kind of had some conversations about what that would look like, and they really didn't want to continue to maintain it. And if it was in their jurisdiction, there were some other more restrictive requirements for access for that project, which would impact kind of traffic flow in Coeur d'Alene. So normally it would be part of the request with the property, so it is odd in this case that it's coming before you as just right-of-way.
So this is a housekeeping thing that cleans
It
things
is.
up, that everybody's in agreement with and all that, and I appreciate that. I was just curious what the background. Thanks.
It's amazing. I had the same exact questions, John. And for some reason, I decided to read the small print because it kept me up. I mean, I could not figure this out. I was all primed to talk about different things. So an interagency agreement. Whereas the federal aid funding has been obtained through the Idaho Department of Transportation to widen and improve Government Way from Hanley Government Way to the intersection of Prairie and Lockway. Whereas to facilitate the coordination of the project, the parties have agreed to designate Coeur d'Alene as a sponsor of the project for the purpose of obtaining the funding, and the project coordinator for the purpose of acquiring the needed right-of-way, blah, blah, blah. So what's driving this thing is state transportation funding to improve the roadway. And I say I appreciate what you said, because my first action was, why didn't we put that in the front? I mean, the whole thing that's driving this, it's just it's a good piece of business, anyway, thank you, John, for helping me.
Hold on, time for a second. Your mic over to your no? All right, thank you. All right, if any other questions for Mike? Nope, okay. Have no signups, no people to talk about this, so close public testimony, bring it to commissioners for this further discussion, a motion.
I'm good.
I think this is in my view, the easiest annexation and the least objectionable annexation we'll ever have, and so I'd be happy to do the findings on this one.
Thank you very
So,
much.
Thanks, John.
So, with the intro, this being a matter having come before the Planning Commission on December 14th of 2021, and there being present a person requesting approval of item A-6-21, annexation of a strip of land varying in width, being a portion of the right-of-way, public right-of-way of Government Way and Aqua Avenue. The applicant is the city of Coeur d'Alene. Location is public road right-of-way located on Aqua Avenue between US 95 and Government Way, and on Government Way between Aqua Avenue and Wilbur Avenue. The motion would support inclusion of findings B1 through B7, statements of fact that are written in our findings worksheet, and that we include motion B8, that this proposal is in conformance with the comp plan as it supports city infrastructure efficiency and the capital, protects the capital improvements that are in place, and enables city services to continue to be maintained and managed appropriately. And that motion B9 be included, that the public facilities and utilities are available and adequate for the proposed use based on Mike's staff report and the fact that the request does not change the existing streets system or limit access to properties. All the physicalities and improvements are already in place already. B10, the physical characteristics of the site do make it suitable for the request at this time. And it's basically reflecting the fact that the existing streets ways are in place and nothing's being changed as a result of the annexation. B11, that the proposal would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic or neighborhood character or existing land uses, because the right-of-ways themselves do not generate traffic as such, and these improvements are already in place as it is. This is really just an administrative housekeeping matter. So with that, in conclusion and decision, the Planning Commission pursuant to the aforementioned finds that the request of the City of Coeur d'Alene for annexation as described in the application should be approved, and the property shall be not provided a zoning classification.
Thank you, John. I have a first, looking for a second.
Second.
Second by Luthrop. Roll call, Shannon, please.
Fleming.
Yes.
Ingalls.
Yes.
Mandel.
Yes.
McCracken.
Yes.
Rumpler. Oh,
Not Rumpler.
Rumpler.
Ward.
You want to think about, no.
I know.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's
Phil Ward,
everybody.
that is.
Yeah, okay.
I should do the word. Just do the word.
Get everybody? Okay. That motion passes. Moving on to the next one. CDA Enterprises is the applicant. A proposed zone change from R12 to C17. Tammy, thank you for hanging around and give us an update on this. Thank you.
Thank you. It'll take me just a minute here. All right, good evening.
Good evening.
So this is a zone change request from R12 to C17 for 455 West Cherry Lane, and it's a .36 acre parcel. The applicant is Coeur d'Alene Enterprises, consultant Mike DeLay. And I mentioned the location off of Cherry Lane. The legal notice was published in the Coeur d'Alene Press on November 20th, 2021. So this is the location map of the subject property. And to give you an idea, this is Niter, located here, Highway 95, Cherry Lane, and Fruitland Lane. So this is the outline of the subject property. And this is an aerial photo, a little closer so you can see it. And I'll give you a little background information. So the .367 parcel is located off of Cherry Lane and west of Highway 95. There is an existing single-family dwelling located on the parcel, which is currently vacant. The applicant owner also owns the abutting property on the east side of the subject property, and they would consolidate the two properties if this is approved. The applicant and property owner does have a lease agreement with the existing tenant, which is Gross Donuts, which is located right here. Should the zone change request be approved, that tenant will enter into a long-term lease of 15 or 20 years with Gross Donuts. And in the future, they intend to construct a new building on that site. They would utilize both properties and replace the existing structure, which was built in approximately 1970. The new structure would accommodate two tenants. Gross Donuts would remain there, and then another tenant, which hasn't been determined yet, would secure the other tenant space. There's been some interest in a yoga studio with CrossFit and or a local credit union in those spaces. So just a little background information for you. So this is an aerial photo showing the nearby services. So this is the subject property. As I mentioned, this is Gross Donuts. To the south is Coeur d'Alene Power Tools, and to the north, there are multiple commercial uses. Texas Roadhouse Grill is located here, Harbor Freight, and you've got some other small retail uses here. And then on that east side of Highway 95, you've got a lot of commercial uses as well. So there are 4 required findings for this requested zone change. The first finding, finding B8, that this proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. This is where the subject property is, right about here. This does fall into the US 95 corridor area within the land use portion of the comp plan. And it is also in transition, which is the green. So transition areas are described as areas where the character of the neighborhood is in transition and should be developed with care. The street network, the number of building lots, and general land use are expected to change greatly within the planning period. And finding B8 continued, here are the characteristics of the Highway 95 corridor, and they're all listed in your staff report. And they continue on this slide. So I've included a few comprehensive plan goals and objectives. Goal number 1, natural environment, and then added 3 objectives. Goal 2, economic environment, with 2 objectives. And then goal 3, home environment, with some objectives. And the last goal 4, administrative environment, with a goal of public participation. Finding B9, that the public facilities and utilities are or not available and adequate for the proposed use. So city staff from the following departments did review the application request in regards to the public utilities and public facilities. And each department did indicate that there are adequate public facilities and public utilities available to serve the proposed use and the proposed zone change request. So there is no objection to the zone change request as proposed. And there are additional comments from each department on pages 7 and 8 of the staff report. Finding B10, that the physical characteristics of the site do or do not make it suitable for the request at this time. So the site is generally flat, and as I mentioned, there's an existing single-family structure on the site which is vacant. There are a number of large trees on the site and other vegetation existing. There are no topographical or physical constraints that would make the subject property unsuitable to change the zoning from R12 to C17. So I've also got several site photos in the staff report, and I'll go over some of these slides to give you an idea what the site looks like. So this is a site photo looking north at the subject property from the south side of Cherry Lane, and as I mentioned, there's a single family on it. There are some trees on the site. I did speak to the applicant about the trees. They will be removing some and trying to retain some. This is another site photo looking west near the center of Cherry Lane with the subject property on the right here. And if you continue down Cherry Lane, you'll end up on Fruitland. And this is a site photo looking northeast along Cherry Lane with the subject property on the left. And then you can see the commercial uses across Highway 95. This is looking directly north on Cherry Lane at Gross Donuts, and behind it is the commercial uses that I had mentioned. And this is a site photo looking south along Highway 95 and across Cherry Lane, the intersection of Cherry Lane and Highway 95, Harbor Freight Tools, so another commercial use. And this is again looking north on Highway 95 at the frontage, both sides of the frontage on 95. Finding B11, that the proposal would or would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and/or existing land uses. So as far as traffic, the proposed zone change would not adversely affect the surrounding area. No traffic is generated from a zone change itself. The applicant stated that the subject property will be used for a parking lot for 2 commercial businesses on the property to the east. So depending on the tenant's commercial use, the property could generate hundreds of trips per day. However, the impacts from the combined 0.75 acres of commercial property are unlikely to exceed those from Texas Roadhouse Restaurant located on the 0.96 acre parcel at Nider Avenue and US 95, which is a similar comparison. Without knowing the future of this property or potential traffic impacts, the Streets and Engineering Department cannot predict the level of traffic generated by this property. And with commercial properties already located nearby and convenient access to and from US 95, traffic impacts are not expected to be extensive. And those are the comments from Chris Bosley with City Engineering. Surrounding land uses. So the red indicates the commercial, which is just north of the subject property located here, and the yellow are the single-family dwellings on both sides of Cherry Lane. And this is the zoning map. The property is currently zoned R12, as are the ones to the west on both sides of Cherry Lane. Oops. And then the red indicates the commercial zoning, C17, which is what the applicant is requesting. So the proposed C17 district is intended as a broad spectrum of commercial district that permits limited service, wholesale, retail, heavy commercial, in addition to allowing residential development at a density of 17 units per acre. The district should be located adjacent to arterials. However, joint access developments are encouraged. And I've included a following list of a few of the principal uses that are permitted in the commercial C17 zoning district. So within that, food and beverage is allowed, and then administrative offices and a number of other ones. So this is the zone change map. As you can see in these green areas over the years, there's been quite a few zone changes in that area, and I've listed all of them specifically in your staff report. The last zone change is ZC621, which is actually the subject property, and this may seem familiar to you all. This item went before Planning Commission and then on to City Council on September 21st of 21. At that time, the City Council did deny without prejudice, and they asked the applicant to go visit with the neighbors and try to talk through some of the questions and concerns they had. The applicant did do that. They talked about some of the requirements that the city would impose as far as C17 design guidelines and standards, which would require a buffer between those uses, the residential use to the west and the commercial. The applicant would do that. They would be putting in sidewalks, which would be required by code. They would move the approach. They will discuss that further with engineering to get the exact location of that. And then the neighbor also asked if they would be willing to put in a fence to separate the two. So the neighbors have talked to the applicant about this project and had quite a few discussions about it. So I just want to give you a little background on that. So the decision point for the zone change, provide a recommendation to the Planning Commission regarding the proposed zone change from R12 to C17 on approximately 0.36 acres. And the Planning Commission will need to consider this request and make appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice.
Thank you, Tammy. Any questions for Tammy? Nope, okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Mike is here for the applicant? Or who, no? Mike, yeah.
Good evening.
Just give me your name and I'll swear you in. Mike, your name?
Oh, Mike DeLay, sorry.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
It's been a long evening so far. Go right ahead, Mike.
I appreciate your patience.
No problem.
And I'll keep it real short. So we were before you a couple of months ago. You passed it. Went before the city council. They said, hey, could you talk to the neighbors? So we'll just let you come back if you do. So I met with all the neighbors that wanted to show up, and some of them showed up here tonight. And we all had a discussion basically that said, hey, you know, we'd like to have a fence. And we said, no problem. We intend to put a fence. And, you know, realistically, it would have a fence there probably if it's a residence anyway. And it's not in the sense that a fence is beneficial to both. We want the fence, and she wants the fence, Chris Heyman, so we said, we'll do the fence. So we put it in the documents that were submitted to you. The curb, or the sidewalk, it was gonna be extended to accommodate if you have the property that adjoins it, which we do, so the sidewalk by code would be extended. And I think with the folks here tonight, and I'm not gonna speak for them, they can speak for themselves, they wanted the sidewalk, we want the sidewalk.
Speaking of Mike, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
They, no
My fault. They wanted the sidewalk, we want them to have the sidewalk. So that's in there, we said. And then I think the other thing was on the, I can I walk towards this? Probably can't talk. Oh, I
No,
can't.
you can use the mouse.
Oh, okay, well, so the commercial power tools, just real quick, their driveway, they would like to see that the driveway for, you know, in a perfect world, and I'm not here to say it can't happen, I'm here to say whatever the folks at the city let us do and whatever the code lets us do, we'll do. The curb cut for ours would be perhaps across from the curb cut for the commercial auto parts store. And frankly, that makes total sense and really is a win-win for everyone because it backs it up from the Highway 95, so it's more safe. And in reality, right now it's probably more hazardous because it's so close to Highway 95. And last but not least, Dennis Gross can't be here. Dennis Gross is the owner of Gross Donuts. He's the one who held the hearing at his place 2 months ago with the neighbors, and I was present too. And Dennis has a 1970 building, and Dennis has come to us and said, hey, the plumbing, the electrical, it's outlived its useful life. It was, not designed for perhaps the type of baking he does for Gross Donuts, and so we said, well, if we can accommodate you, we want you to stay. And he says, I want to stay too, but I need to get a more functional building here. And I said, agreed. So all that being said, open it up to you guys. You guys have demonstrated enormous patience, and I mean, whatever you have for a question, I'm here to answer, and then I'm sure some of these folks here can talk as well.
Questions? Anyone?
It's kind of a question and a comment. I guess, when I read the report, I was a little bit lost because I said, we just did this, and I get it. It was kind of sent back. And I don't think, as I recall, I don't think we had anybody from the neighborhood come to our hearing. And that sometimes happens. They didn't get the word, they whatever, they couldn't make it, whatever. And so, we didn't hear any issues from the neighborhood. It moves on to council with a recommendation, and people show up there, and then they're going, oh, why isn't this all worked out? And correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't add conditions to a zone change.
Rarely. We have a conditional zoning provision in the code, but we've done it once that I'm aware of. So
it's not
rare.
typical that
It's
we
not
put
typical.
little details like, whether the parking is parallel or perpendicular or diagonal or whatever. So, regardless of what we choose to do up here, I think, as you know from the last time around, the real show is going to be the next one. This is the warm-up act, and when you come back to city council, it's going to be really important that the folks in the room are kind of in lockstep with you, I guess.
Agreed, very much. And I only add to that is that the property that we're here on tonight is surrounded by previous zone changes. I mean, from 1980 on. You can see it in your staff report, and all of them have been approved, and just because of the transitional nature of that area. And like it or not, there's a highway there, and like it or not, it's commercial there, and I'm not here to can't undo a cooked goose, so to speak. But anyway, thanks. That's all I have. If there's any other questions, be happy to answer.
Yeah, if I could, please. I know that the property out to the north of you is zoned commercial much further west than you are. I think the one that you're acquiring pretty much will align the commercial zoning with that on the south side of the street. Does that sound right? I think
It's pretty close. The boundaries
to
would
property.
be
Okay.
slightly further west on this
Question I have
subject
is,
property.
what is the driveway situation that you've apparently agreed to change?
Well, it's not that we've agreed to change. We've said this. If the code will permit us to align them, we would do that. If the city will allow us to align them. And the reason that's a win-win for both is because it sets it back further from Highway 95.
The current driveway is terrible.
Yeah, and that was,
make a U-turn, you confront drive-through traffic coming out.
and that was
So
done.
Gross Donut is moving into your new building, is that the deal?
Yes, they are.
Okay,
If we
and
can
that,
give them.
be up to
building.
staff, but it somehow will accommodate the driveway so it's
Yes.
moved further and works better. That's all I have. Thank
Yes,
you.
no, good question. And, quite frankly, the folks that are here tonight pointed that out to me, and I just hadn't thought it through that far because I didn't get a zone change quite yet. But good point.
All right, Mike.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
I'd just like to point out, well, that's fine, I don't have a question to you, I just have a general observation, that it is significant when you come before the council or the planning commission to talk. You're listened to, and that's exactly what happened here. And that's the way the system works, you know? And no one came talk to us ahead of time, you know, we might have been able to, but that's good. So I encourage people not to be shy about coming out and testifying. It's just good business. And the other part of it is, it's just nice when, like Van said, to talk to the neighbors when you go through this, because if the neighbors know what's going on, it helps. And then I think it was a foundation a week ago. We had a couple people come here, and they were chit-chatting, and we had Chris in the audience, we had the developer in the audience, and those people got to talk with their concerns with the two instrumental parties, and that helped everybody. So for the vast number of people that are watching this, I encourage you to express your views whenever you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I have Sabrina Carlisle does wish to speak.
I hope she supports it.
Just state your name and I'll swear you in.
Sabrina Carlisle.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Go right ahead.
I'm just going to read something that I wrote. That way it keeps me focused and quick. A few of us residents did attend the council meeting that initially denied the rezoning until the developer reached out to the residents to talk about true concerns we had. On October 26th, myself, my husband, and some other residents on our street met with Mike DeLay and Dennis Gross to discuss our concerns with them about their plans for the lot rezoning commercial. After they addressed those concerns of traffic, noise control, and the demolition of a perfectly good home, Mike confirmed that a 6-foot sound and sight barrier fence would work well near the swellway by Chris's home. Specific attention given to the appropriate entrance and exit ways for possible traffic issues like Mike had mentioned. And then Mike donated any of the items from the house being demolished to us to utilize in remodels and Habitat for Humanity as soon as the resident that is in it leaves next year. And so with them actually talking to us and negotiating and showing true concern for our neighborhood, we're in support of the rezoning.
Great, thank you very much. And if I can make note, when this does go to city council, I'm not telling you what to do, but you know, you might want to show up and read that statement once again.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Great. I had Chad Wheeler. Right, maybe he was on the wrong one because he was on the other one.
You probably signed up the wrong one.
Mike, unless you have something else to add, I'm closing public hearing testimony on
Nice
this.
to hear the Pledge of Allegiance, and I gotta be honest with you, when we started the very beginning.
I
Mr. Chairman, do you want to come up?
Yeah, sorry.
I'll keep it short. It was very nice to hear and very moving for me to hear the Pledge of Allegiance when we started tonight.
Oh.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to close public hearing on this, move this to any discussion and a motion. Len?
Deja vu.
Yes.
I think we did this already.
Yes.
I don't think there's any issue, and I'm delighted that you reached out to the neighborhood and that, buy-in is a big deal, and that's great. So you're eating away a little at the residential, but the noise from that street has to be tough on those who are living in residences. So a solid wall, something that'll break some of that noise will really help the adjacencies. So no, I don't think we need to beat this dog, do we? Okay, we already did that in the first one.
Second.
Okay. Let me go ahead. This matter having come before the Planning Commission on December 14th, 2021, and there being present a person requesting approval of ZC, I'm a Canadian, it was going to be Z, ZC-7-21, a request for a zone change from R12 to C17 zoning district. Applicant CDA Enterprises LLC, Mike DeLay. Location, plus or minus 0.366 acre parcel off of Cherry Lane and west of Highway 95, located at 455 West Cherry Lane. Findings, justification for the decision criteria, the Planning Commission adopts items B1 through B7. B8, that this proposal is in conformance with the comp plan policies as follows. Goal 1, preserving the natural environment. Mostly we're working with efficiency here. The highway, the proximity to other businesses, a continuation of C-17 in the area, and connectivity. The economic environment, providing, worthwhile accommodations and business presences on the highway. And home environment, obviously acknowledging your adjacencies and being sensitive to that neighborhood. That's a lot. And goal 4, administrative environment, following all the city services are there, we should be able to utilize those sufficiently, and that certainly your public participation gets a gold star. B9, that public facilities and utilities are available and adequate for the proposed use. This is based on a will serve, can serve from the staff reporting. B10, that the physical characteristics of the site do make it suitable for the request at this time. It's basically flat. Some of the trees may or may not be preserved. That's up to the owner's discretion. That there will be a fence and a buffer to accommodate the adjacent neighbors, and that sidewalks and curbs will be introduced into this site. B11, that the proposal would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and/or existing land uses. As we've noted, they are working with the adjacencies. In conclusion, the Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, finds the request of CDA Enterprises LLC might delay for a zone change, as described in the application, should be approved. From I always forget, is it R? It moved from R12 to C17. I think we should restate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a first by Commissioner Fleming. Need a second?
Second?
I have a second by Commissioner Mandel. Roll call, Shannon, please. Oh, sorry. McCracken, I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention. You ladies all sound the same. Go right ahead, Shannon, with roll call, please.
Fleming.
Yes.
Ingalls.
Yes.
Mandel.
Yes.
McCracken.
Yes.
Lutrip.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes. Congratulations. Call for adjournment.
Call for adjournment.
Second.
Have a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you very much and welcome.
A full panel.
You made it through your first planning and zoning meeting.
First panel we've had full for how
I'm a
long?
little bit late on my prediction, about an hour.
Merry
but-
Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas.